Chapter 886. Both of them were prepared for a sneak attack. One was sneaky while the other pretended not to know. They got closer and closer to each other. Lan Hao had a water splitter in his hand which he hid under his straw cape. Because of the ripples in the water, everyone could not see clearly, but they could vaguely see Yu Qianqiu looking around blankly. Most people did not know what was going on behind the temporary calm. Only Ning Zixuan and Su Yuchong knew the danger. They knew that their eldest senior brother was using his straw cape to hide himself, and was definitely approaching quietly to prepare a sneak attack. Their hearts were in their throats, hoping that their eldest senior brother would succeed in one strike. When the distance between the two of them was less than 200 meters, Yu Qianqiu could already feel Lan Hao slowly taking out his weapon. It was obvious that he was ready to attack. He could not help but curse in his heart. He wanted to wait for his opponent to get closer and see if he could use the absorbing star's great skill in the water. That way his chances of winning would be higher. Lan Hao was worried that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was too high, so he did not dare to get too close. He quietly stopped and was about to make a sneak attack when he suddenly heard a piu-piu sound coming from below. Before he had time to check, the water curtain in front of him had already flashed with purple light. At the same time, Lan Hao saw a trace of an evil smile hanging on the corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth. He was immediately shocked. His reaction was considered fast and he immediately guessed that he had fallen into a trap. He did not care about anything else and desperately used teleportation to escape. A dark red halo of blood spread in the water, and a hua sound rose from the surface of the water. A white light flashed and Lan Hao appeared, quickly catapulting into the air. He held the water splitter in one hand and with the other hand he took out a pill and crushed it. He applied it to the wound on his thigh and immediately stopped the blood flow. The onlookers did not see clearly what had happened. They only saw a flash of purple light under the water, and Lan Hao immediately ran for his life and was injured. Yu Qianqiu had already kept the purple flame flying sword. He had always insisted on not exposing this thing as much as possible. It would be troublesome if someone recognized it as the purple flame. This sneak attack made Yu Qianqiu feel that it was a pity. He didn't expect that the other party would still be able to escape. Although the other party had kicked him in the leg for an immortal cultivator, it probably wasn't a big deal. The key thing was that the other party didn't hurt his vital parts. However, this also made Yu Qianqiu realize that his judgment was correct. Based on the opponent's cultivation and reaction speed, it would be difficult for him to hurt him. If he had followed up with a purple flame berserk explosion after injuring his opponent, he should have been able to finish him off. However, if he had done that, the chances of his purple flames being recognized would have greatly increased. This was a risk that was not easy to take. At that moment, Lan Hao, who was floating in the air, had a look of bewilderment on his face. He did not expect to be discovered by the other party even though he was wearing the invisibility cloak. This undoubtedly proved that the other party's cultivation base was very high. But the strange thing was that the speed of the purple flying swords that attacked him just now was a bit slow. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to react at such a close distance. How could the speed of the flying swords with such high cultivation be so slow? Could it be that the other party intended to let him go? That was not possible. Since he couldn't figure it out, he simply didn't want to think about it. At this point, he already had no way out. Even if he didn't want to fight, he had to fight. Lan Hao's left arm shook, and the fishing net that was wrapped around his arm burst out with a multicolored light. Like thousands of strands, it expanded and stretched infinitely. With a schwa sound, it scattered into the water below. Yu Qianqiu almost didn't have time to react. He found himself surrounded by a rapidly pouncing net that was rapidly shrinking towards him. Without saying anything further, he directly burrowed into the ground and emerged from the periphery of the net that was surrounding him. Looking back, he saw that the large rock that he had just landed on had been shredded into pieces by the dense, silk-like fishing net. Yu Qianqiu was shocked on the spot. He didn't know what this thin net was made of. It was actually so sharp that it could cut through rocks like tofu. If he had been careless just now, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Lan Hao, who was in the air, could see the situation underwater more clearly than anyone else. Furthermore, this area of water was connected to the treasured gourd, so he could clearly sense the changes in the water through the gourd. Otherwise, he might have injured more than one leg when he was running for his life just now. However, once he saw it clearly, he was shocked. He had seen people burrow into the ground, but he had never seen someone burrow into a rock. He thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him, but reality was reality. The net that he had cast did not catch the other party at all. The fishing net that had retracted after a single strike quickly exploded into thousands of strands again and burrowed into the water. In the blink of an eye, it had once again enveloped Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt a toothache. This thing's ejection speed was really fast. To be honest, it wouldn't take him much effort to break this net. However, it would be a pity to destroy such a miraculous treasure. Left with no choice, he resisted the urge to burrow into the rubble to hide. As soon as he dove into the rubble, Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. His opponent had played with him to the extreme. This net had actually sunk more than 10 meters into the ground. Even the person in the rock were wrapped up like a dumpling. They were coming at him from all directions. The holes in the net were also very small, so it was impossible to burrow through even if he wanted to. Damn it! I don't care about this stupid net. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth. Just as the fishing net was about to wrap around him, a purple light exploded from his body, and the fishing net that was coming at him was instantly reduced to nothingness. Lan Hao immediately sensed that the treasure had been damaged. In a great shock, he hurriedly retracted his net. However, he saw that the rapidly retracting fishing net had wrapped around a rock. What surprised him even more was that Yu Qianqiu had already surfaced from the water and was staring at him coldly. "Eldest senior brother, be careful." Ning Zixuan and Su Yuchong cried out in alarm. Following that, there was an uproar from the crowd. Lan Hao, who had been vigilant against Yu Qianqiu, slowly lowered his head. He looked at his chest in disbelief. There was a purple flying sword stuck in his chest. After the flying sword shot out from the rock that was dragged back by the fishing net, the rock broke into pieces and fell to the ground. The flying sword had been hidden in the rock when it was brought back. Because Yu Qianqiu had suddenly appeared on the water surface, Lan Hao's attention was immediately diverted from the rock. That was why he was in such a predicament. Otherwise, there was still a chance that he could have avoided it. At this moment, Lan Hao suddenly felt a burst of heat from the flying sword stuck in his chest. In an instant, his heart was turned into ashes. Lan Hao could not suppress the burning pain in his heart. His blood qi surged and he spat out a large lump of viscous blood. His eyes were wide open as he pointed at Yu Qianqiu and stuttered, "You cheated, shameless." His body was already swaying in the air, and it looked like he could not stand any longer. "I'm not cheating, I'm just playing with you." Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and said, "Instead of being a good sect master, you listen to that old dog's instigation and go against me. You should know that killing you is a piece of cake. If I didn't want to play with you, how could you have lived until now?" After he finished speaking as if to prove his words, Yu Qianqiu landed lightly on the water surface. The moment his feet touched the water surface, a pure white frost immediately condensed on the water surface. "Caw-caw," the sound of ice rapidly forming rang out. Starting from under Yu Qianqiu's feet, the pure white frost quickly spread in all directions. The surrounding temperature dropped rapidly, as if the last bit of warmth that existed in this world had disappeared, leaving behind only a bone-piercing cold. In just a moment, the water cube that was surging with waves just a moment ago had already turned into a huge block of ice. A huge block of ice that took up a radius of several miles. Although the sun was blazing in the sky, the surrounding temperature was frighteningly low. The change in temperature was so huge that even these immortal cultivators could not help but shiver. Looking at the world of ice in front of them, everyone could not help but let out a breath of cold air. Each and every one of them was dumbfounded, almost thinking that it was an illusion. Yu Qianqiu stood on the crystal-clear ice surface. On the surface he looked calm, but in his heart he was secretly rejoicing that it was just right. This was already the limit of his current cultivation, that he could turn water into ice. What surprised him the most was that when he was absorbing the surrounding temperature just now, he could faintly feel the existence of a weak purple fire element in the air. This made him fall into deep thought. Since the purple fire was the energy that supported the operation of this world, could it be that the reason why he could not see it normally was because the purple fire existed in a scattered form throughout this world? Lan Hao, whose heart meridians had been destroyed, finally could not hold on any longer. A bitter smile appeared on his face. He now believed that Yu Qianqiu was indeed playing with him. Otherwise, he would have turned the water into ice from the very beginning, and he would not have been able to play with the water at all. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great. Lan Hao closed his eyes, tilted his head and fell straight down, smashing into the thick ice with a bang. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and the purple fire-flying sword stuck in Lan Hao's chest flew back into his sleeve. Then he slowly walked over and put away the treasures and storage bracelet on Lan Hao's body. The surrounding crowd also landed on the huge block of ice. Many of them even squatted down to touch it and found that it was indeed a solid block of ice. It was definitely not an illusion. There were still 3 people floating in the air. Feng Jiru's face turned pale, and now she finally believed that she had done a stupid thing. Ning Zixuan and Su Yuchong watched helplessly as Yu Qianqiu took away their eldest senior brother's belongings. The two of them almost simultaneously cast resentful gazes at Feng Jiru. If it weren't for her, they wouldn't have ended up like this. The two of them looked at each other, nodded and then shouted in unison, "We admit defeat." After that, they immediately fled together. Feng Jiru was shocked as if she had been struck by lightning. She suddenly turned around and shouted anxiously, "Stop. It's not over yet, stop." Seeing that she could not stop the two of them, she immediately turned into a blue light and chased after them. However, a moon suddenly appeared in the sky and directly bounced the blue light back. "Feng Jiru, do you think I'm just a decoration? If you want to leave, fulfill your bet first." The voice of the great bright wheel sounded in the sky. The blue light appeared, and Feng Jiru immediately cupped her hands toward the great bright wheel standing on the ice and pleaded, "Master. It's not over yet, the two of them haven't finished yet, I'll call them back now." The great bright wheel appeared in the sky in an instant, and with a wave of his hand, the moon retracted into his sleeve. Then he put his hands on his abdomen and said indifferently, "They have already admitted defeat, what else is there to compete for?" Chapter 887. I have a way to persuade them to come back. Continue, I will get them back now. Feng Jiru retreated in fear. The great bright wheel's eyes suddenly opened and said in a calm tone, "Are you joking with me? I will get them back now." Feng Jiru said and turned to fly away. The great bright wheel snorted coldly and revealed its palms that were hidden in its sleeves. 10 light balls shot out from its 10 fingers and chased after Feng Jiru in an instant. Feng Jiru turned around to look and she was instantly scared out of her wits. She cried out in alarm, "Please, for the sake of the Heartless Palace." Before she could finish her words, the 10 balls of light suddenly turned into 10 huge crescent moons, weaving a net to entangle them. Feng Jiru knew it was too late to say anything. The great bright wheel was ready to kill her, so she quickly changed her position in the air. However, the 10 moons followed her like a shadow and she could not get rid of them. Feng Jiru, who was struggling to deal with them, made up her mind and summoned her flying sword to fight back. The great bright wheel's eyes flashed fiercely and it shouted, "How dare you? How dare you resist?" He swung his palm in the air, and the 10 crescent moons suddenly appeared like illusions. They cut through the void, leaving silver arcs in the air. The power of the thunderbolt made people feel as if they were looking at a bolt from the blue. At this moment, a shrill scream rang out in the air, and a cloud of blood mist exploded in the air. 10 ghost-like crescent moons darted out of the blood mist and turned into 10 light balls. The great bright wheel waved his long sleeve and collected the light balls. He didn't stop at all. Leaving behind a cold snort, he turned into a golden light and disappeared into the distance. This scene caused everyone to go silent like cicadas in the winter. Especially the expressions of the elders of the various sects that held down the fort here. They'd never imagined that the damning wheel would actually be so formidable, and it would kill Feng Jiru in a fit of rage in an instant. In comparison, killing the elders was not a problem. The terror of the great bright wheel suddenly pressed down on everyone's hearts like a mountain. Even Wei Chuanqiu was slightly absent-minded. He was immersed in the demonic transformations of the 10 full moons. Putting himself in Wei Chuanqiu's shoes, he realized that it was actually difficult for him to resolve it with his own movement techniques. Only now did he understand that De Mingluan had shown mercy when it attacked him. Otherwise he would have been in deep trouble. Before the pieces of flesh and blood in the air could fall to the ground, Yu Qianqiu immediately dashed over. He caught one of the storage bracelets with his sharp eyes and sharp hands. After inspecting it with his divine sense, he nearly laughed out loud. Huang Xiaolong noticed that Feng Jiru was indeed worthy of being an elder of the #1 force in the immortal world. Just the divine Great Spirit stones alone numbered more than 7 billion. Huang Xiaolong wondered if these were the public funds of the Heartless Palace. However, this was not something that Yu Qianqiu was worried about. He only thought of it as his spoils of war. He looked around in satisfaction, then without another word he quickly flew towards the World Commerce Association. Wei Chuanqiu's eyes lit up when he came back to his senses. Seeing Yu Qianqiu running away so quickly after winning the battle, he thought he must have made a fortune. He immediately chased after him. The two of them landed in front of the World Commerce Association's building. When the lords saw that Yu Qianqiu had returned, they were all extremely excited. Since the torture master had returned unscathed, they reckoned that they had definitely won. What's in Feng Jiuru's storage bracelets? Wei Chuanqiu eagerly followed behind Yu Qianqiu, tugging on his sleeve as he asked. Yu Qianqiu flung his sleeve and strode inside, saying, "I told you it's nothing, I've told you many times." That can't be. Feng Jiuru is in charge of the Heartless Palace's branch here. No matter how few things he has, it can't be that little. Wei Chuanqiu expressed his doubt as he chased after Huang Xiaolong. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with him. He quickly walked into the main hall and stepped onto the curved platform at the edge of the pool. He turned around and shouted to the crowd, "The trouble has been resolved for now. Keep your spirits up, I believe there will be guests coming soon." As soon as he finished speaking, the feudal lords cheered excitedly. They weren't stupid, they knew that after this matter, they had at least gained a foothold in the immortal world. On the large ice layer of the life and death mound, the spectators left one after another. Soon after, more people came after hearing the news. This barren land that had always been uninhabited suddenly became lively. After a whole month, the huge ice layer finally disappeared from everyone's sight. During this time, countless people from the immortal world had come to visit. Although the opening of the World Commerce Company caused quite a few twists and turns, it became even more lively because of this. Yu Qianqiu put on his big red robe again and welcomed guests with a smiling face in the main hall. This time the people who came from various sects were much more polite to him. When they saw him walking over, they greeted him with some reverence. This was the embodiment of strength. Only with strength could he gain everyone's recognition. This was something that needed no doubt. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu became unfathomable in everyone's eyes. No one could see through his cultivation, but based on the fact that he could easily kill 2 late-stage immortal sect masters, everyone guessed that his cultivation had at least reached the great immortal level. However, everyone was clear that this time, the World Commerce Company had formed a great enmity with the Heartless Palace. They were afraid that they wouldn't have an easy time in the future. However, the various sects that came to support the opening were still shocked by the large variety of immortal herbs that the World Commerce Company was selling. Hence, people kept making roundabout inquiries to the various feudal lords who had big red flowers hanging on their chests in front of the counters to find out the origin of these immortal herbs. The feudal lords who had long since unified their statements all pushed the origin of the immortal herbs to Wei Chuanqiu, saying that Wei Chuanqiu was the one who provided them. As the various sects' disciples passed on the news, they immediately sent people with money to purchase the immortal herbs that their sects needed. The trading scene on the lower 5 floors gradually became lively. The patrolling Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. For this opening he had put in a lot of effort. All the immortal herbs he sold were below 200 million divine grade spirit stones. He didn't take out anything that was worth more than 200 million divine grade spirit stones. Most of the immortal herbs he sold were worth less than 100 million divine grade spirit stones. Even so, Huang Xiaolong was still worried. He studied the immortal herbs he sold according to the illustrated handbook for a long time. As long as the handbook indicated that the immortal herbs were the main ingredient of an immortal pill, Huang Xiaolong would always sell 1 or 2 ingredients. For example, if an immortal pill required 3 main ingredients, then one of the main ingredients would definitely not be sold. If it required 4 or 5 main ingredients, then 2 of them would never be sold. Yu Qianqiu naturally had a deeper consideration for doing this. He couldn't disregard everything for the sake of money. Although the World Commerce Company's main purpose was to earn money, there were other things more important than that. Therefore he could earn money and he could sell large amounts of immortal herbs, but he would never allow the various sects to gather all the immortal herbs they needed. Otherwise, relying on those big sects' powerful financial strength to obtain the immortal pills they urgently needed, it would be akin to helping a tiger do evil. Of course, Yu Qianqiu didn't rule out that those big sects had the immortal herbs they needed to refine immortal pills, but it was certain that they could only make up a small portion at most. It was impossible for them to make up for all the immortal herbs he sold, unless the various sects also had a utopia in their hands. Therefore, Yu Qianqiu wasn't worried that the various sects could stir up too much trouble. He still had to continue earning the money he had to earn. After walking up and down a few times, seeing that the World Commerce Company's business was on the right track, Yu Qianqiu smiled and prepared to return to the 6th floor because there were still guests there. Master Ye Huolianqing and Du Kairan had all left, but Shui Mingqing and a few friends were still here as guests. As the host, he had to accompany them. Just as he was about to step onto the stairs to the 2nd floor, he suddenly heard a woman shout from behind him, "Sect leader Yu." Yu Qianqiu was startled. He felt that the voice was very unfamiliar, as though he had never heard it before. He turned around and saw a man and a woman who looked relatively young walking over. Their looks weren't bad and they looked like a perfect match. Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked suspiciously, "You two are?" The woman smiled and cupped her hands. "I'm Long Xiaojiu, and Hidden Dragon Villa's elder Long Yugong is my grandfather." The man also cupped his hands and said, "I'm Ancestor Guang Yan, and Hidden Dragon Villa's elder Guang Juanru is my grandfather." Excuse me. So it's the Hidden Dragon Villa's elder's grandson and granddaughter. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands politely as though he had heard of their great names for a long time, but he was muttering in his heart. He had heard of Hidden Dragon Villa, but he had never heard of these two old fellows. He didn't know if these two little fellows were real or not. Liars often appeared in this kind of lively occasion. Thus, he was somewhat on guard in his heart, but he still wore a smile on his face as he asked, "May I know why the two Hidden Dragon Villa's great disciples have come to find me?" Long Xiaojiu smiled and took out a gift box, saying, "The two of us have come under orders to represent Hidden Dragon Villa to congratulate the World Commerce Association on its auspicious opening and prosperous business." Guang Yanzu glanced at her. Orders were fake. It was true that she had pestered Long Yugong for half a day to agree, but he was sent to supervise her, afraid that she would see people she shouldn't see and cause trouble that she shouldn't. With a gift to receive, Yu Qianqiu was naturally happy, but he also felt that it was a little strange. He had never interacted with Hidden Dragon Villa before, so why would they come to give him a gift? Could it be that they had sharp eyes and saw that the World Commerce Association had a bright future, so they took the initiative to make friends? Then I'll thank your villa for their good intentions. Yu Qianqiu accepted the gift, thinking that it wasn't a bad thing to have more powerful friends, so he raised his hand and said, "It's too noisy here. Two esteemed guests, please follow me to a small table on the 6th floor." Long Xiaojiu and Guang Yanzu didn't act pretentious and followed him directly to the 6th floor. There was a person guarding the stairway to the 6th floor, obviously not allowing unauthorized people to trespass. When the guard saw that it was Yu Qianqiu who had brought people over, he naturally let them go up. Once the three of them went up to the 6th floor, they were immediately isolated from the noise downstairs. With one look, it was obvious that someone had set up a soundproof barrier. Yu Qianqiu brought the two of them through a corridor and pushed open a large door. Their eyes suddenly brightened up, and it turned out to be a large room. This was actually the living room on the 6th floor. The walls and floor were all inlaid with white jade slabs, and in addition to a few large transparent crystal floor-to-ceiling windows, the lighting was very good, making the entire living room seem spacious and bright. Chapter 888. A few rattan chairs were placed elegantly in the living room. Du Feng and the rest were either sitting or lying down as they chatted. Beside the transparent crystal window, there were two pots of devil's ivy. Wan Ling was standing there, curiously pulling the two ropes on the shutter to study it. One side of the shutter was constantly rolled up and down by her. Mu Tinjiao leaned back on a rattan chair and touched the armrest with both hands. She chuckled and said, "The simple furnishings in this living room reveal a unique elegance of craftsmanship. It's really rare. I wonder which refined scholar decorated it." Unique elegance? Hui Yunlong propped up his upper body from the slightly elastic rattan chair and looked around. He chuckled and said, "A few worthless rattan chairs in an empty living room is considered elegant? Forgive my poor eyesight, but I really can't tell. But this is the first time I find this rattan chair to be quite comfortable. It's not that hard and it's also breathable. Du Feng rolled his eyes and shook his head. Didn't you notice that I feel much more relaxed after entering this place? Hui Yunlong looked at himself and realized that he was lying down. He immediately sat up and smiled awkwardly. It seems so. This is called artistic conception. Can make guests feel at home. You won't understand even if I explain it. Du Feng waved his hand in disdain. Mu Tianjiao couldn't help but smile. Hui Yunlong glared at her and wanted to argue, but he noticed that Yu Qianqiu had brought 2 people over. Yu Qianqiu walked to the center and pointed at the 2 people he brought. He said, "Let me introduce them. They are friends from Hidden Dragon Manor. Do you know them? Long Xiaojiu, Guang Nianzu." The 2 people cupped their hands and introduced themselves. Wan Ling, who was standing by the window, walked over and smiled. "I didn't expect Miss Long to be here." Guang Nianzu's expression changed when he saw Wan Ling. He looked at Long Xiaojiu worriedly. However, Long Xiaojiu's expression only changed slightly. Then she smiled and said, "Miss Wan, we meet again." Shui Mingqing and Mu Tianjiao smiled and nodded to greet the 2 newcomers. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, on the other hand, looked at each other. Both of them had heard of the story of Wan Ling and Long Xiaojiu. These 2 were enemies. How did they meet here? Hehe. It's good that you know each other. Everyone sit down. Yu Qianqiu smiled and invited everyone to take a seat. After he sat down, he looked around and asked Mu Tianjiao curiously, "Where are the 2 people protecting you?" He was asking about the 2 golden-robed men who were protecting her. "I don't need anyone's protection here. I've invited them to stay at the Chamber of Commerce Alliance for the time being." Mu Tian smiled. Yu Qianqiu clicked his tongue and said, "Miss Mu is no longer the same as before. She is protected by the people of the Immortal Palace wherever she goes. I'm so envious." Hui Yunlong and Du Feng looked a little embarrassed when he said that, so he couldn't go on. Mu Tianjiao was well aware of this. She pointed at the furnishings in the living room and changed the topic. "I wonder who decorated this living room. It's quite elegant. If it's convenient, introduce it to me so I can learn from it." "Elegant?" Yu Qianqiu waved his hand disapprovingly and said, "I'm just afraid of trouble. To save money, I just found a few chairs and threw them here. They're not elegant at all." "Hehe. I knew it." Hui Yunlong laughed and slapped his leg. Du Feng immediately tilted his head and sneered. He was being modest, but you took it seriously. "Why don't you think about why this barren mountain became famous in the hands of sect leader Yu?" Hui Yunlong stared at him and said, "Are you saying that I have no taste?" All right. Yu Qianqiu quickly stood up and stopped the 2 from arguing. He smiled and said to everyone, "I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I have a new friend here, so I don't have much to entertain you. Why don't I treat you to a bath?" "A bath?" Hui Yunlong was stunned. He thought he had heard wrong. The others also looked at each other in confusion. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "That's right. I have authentic mountain spring water downstairs. It's perfect for bathing. It's also a specialty of my World Chamber of Commerce. I wonder if you're interested?" Is this appropriate?" Du Feng looked at Mu Tianjiao and the other 2 women. His words made the 3 women feel awkward. Yu Qianqiu immediately explained, "Actually, it doesn't matter. We have women in the World Chamber of Commerce too. The bathing area downstairs is separated into men and women. They won't interfere with each other." "In that case, I'd like to experience the specialty of the World Chamber of Commerce." Wan Ling stood up with a smile and tilted her head to look at Long Xiaojiu. "I wonder if Miss Long is interested?" Long Xiaojiu's expression stiffened. Most women in this world were conservative. She wasn't used to talking about bathing with outsiders. However, Wan Ling's light and joking words were no different from provocation in her ears. She immediately gritted her teeth and stood up with a sweet smile. "Then I'll accompany Miss Wan to experience the specialty of the World Chamber of Commerce." Seeing that everyone had agreed, everyone stood up and went downstairs. However, they were all stunned when they saw Mu Tianjiao sitting there alone. When Mu Tianjiao saw this, she waved at everyone and forced a smile. "You guys go ahead. I'll be fine here." Yu Qianqiu was still a little confused. However, the others understood that Mu Tianjiao was about to get married. A woman's reputation was very important at this time. If a group of men and women went to bathe and spread rumors, it wouldn't be good. Moreover, Mu Tianjiao was going to marry the Immortal Palace's external affairs commander, Wu Xiong. Du Feng secretly transmitted his voice to Yu Qianqiu. Only then did Yu Qianqiu react. He immediately led a group of people downstairs. The large living room was empty. Mu Tianjiao slowly leaned against the rattan chair and sat there alone. There was a rather big basement under the World Chamber of Commerce. In order not to destroy the water vein of the mountain spring, Yu Qianqiu had personally built it. The entire basement was paved with white jade and illuminated by fluorescent stones. It was divided into two spaces, one big and one small. The big one was for men and the small one was for women. When they reached the bottom, a passageway appeared in front of them. At the end of the left was a stone sculpture of a strong, bare-chested man. There was a small stone door on the side. At the end of the right was a stone sculpture of a buxom woman. There was also a small stone door on the side. The symbolic stone sculpture was very obvious. It undoubtedly told the visitors that the men should go to the left and the women to the right. The two women looked calm, but they were actually a little nervous. The men and women separated here. Yu Qianqiu led the group into the place where the men were bathing. When Hui Yunlong saw the environment inside, he immediately chuckled. This seems a little interesting. This was a circular space with a jade stone pool in the middle. The water in the pool was clear. The most attractive thing was that around the pool, there were 10 graceful and beautiful girls kneeling, standing, or lying on their sides. They were all stone sculptures with different movements. The only thing they had in common was that each of the 10 beautiful girls was holding a bottle and pouring water into the pool. This was where the clear spring water in the pool came from. At the same time, there were hidden grooves at the edge of the pool. When the water in the pool reached a certain height, it would flow out through the hidden grooves, maintaining the vitality of the mountain spring. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and greeted the group. He then took the lead to demonstrate. He took off his pants and walked into the step-like pool. The center seemed to be a little deep. It reached Yu Qianqiu's chin. After he wet himself, he swayed to a half-kneeling beauty stone sculpture. There was a place for him to lie down and enjoy the bath at the same time. Seeing the comfortable expression on his face, Hui Yunlong couldn't help but take off his clothes, leaving only his underwear. He couldn't wait to dive into the pool. He found that the pool water was cold but very comfortable. Then he found a beautiful stone sculpture that he liked and enjoyed it. Du Feng and Guang Junru looked at each other. They also took off their clothes and ran into the pool. The 4 men chatted and soaked in the pool. It was very comfortable. The layout of the women's bathroom that Wan Ling and Long Xiaojie were in was similar to the men's bathroom, but the space was much smaller. Beside the pool, there were 4 strong men's stone sculptures holding bottles and pouring water. But at least they had a pair of underwear. What made the 2 women speechless was that they didn't know which wicked person made these stone sculptures. The 4 men's heads were carved with cloth strips that covered their eyes. They were quite considerate of the women. But even so, the 2 women felt a little uncomfortable and blushed slightly. Although they were stone sculptures, if they really took off their clothes and soaked in the pool, they would still feel like they were being watched by men. Miss Long, why is your face red? Are you shy? Wan Ling suddenly looked at Long Xiaojie and smiled. Long Xiaojie looked back and sneered, why don't you look at your face in the mirror? Wan Ling was stunned. Then she felt that her face was also a little hot. She was speechless. Long Xiaojie was also stunned. She realized that this was the first time she made this woman speechless. She felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure in her heart. At the same time, she felt a little strange. This woman was famous for being a slut. Who knew how many men she had hooked up with? How could she be shy? The environment here is really special. It's really unique. As Wan Ling spoke, she began to undress herself. After a while, she was only left with a pair of underwear and a doo-doo. Her slender thighs were straight, her exposed skin was smooth and white, and her graceful figure was curvy. Even a woman would be tempted to look at her. Wan Ling deliberately walked to Long Xiaojie and stood beside her. She tilted her head to look at Long Xiaojie, who was slightly shorter than her. It was obvious that she wanted to show off her figure. Then she swayed her waist and walked into the pool. After soaking in the water, she splashed water with her palm and wiped her fragrant shoulders. She said to herself, there was once someone who kept saying that my figure was the best in the world. Unfortunately, that person was killed by a jealous woman. When she said that, Long Xiaoju was so angry that she almost bit her lips. The past flashed before her eyes. In the end, she suppressed her anger and slowly undressed her clothes. She also wore underwear and doo-doo and went into the water. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not. When she walked to Wan Ling, she reached behind her and gently pulled down the doo-doo. Her 2 breasts popped out. The smile on Wan Ling's face froze. Her mouth was slightly open as she subconsciously looked at her chest. Chapter 889. Some men are easily bewitched by some women. This kind of man is blind and can't even tell good from bad. He deserves to die. Long Xiaojiu held the clear spring water with both hands and poured it on her proud breasts. She said disapprovingly, "I've met such a man before." He came back to his senses and scolded himself for being blind. He said that some women can't attract a man's attention even if they strip naked. I don't know if what he said is true or false. But what's the use of keeping such a man who goes with the wind? Wan Ling was dumbfounded by Long Xiaojiu's words. Although Long Xiaojiu's words were nonsensical, they hit Wan Ling's weak spot, reminding her of the scholar she met many years ago. At that time she did strip naked. Who knew that the scholar would just take liberties with her and then leave without any reluctance? It seemed that her body was really not attractive to men. "Hey, Miss Wan, what's wrong?" Long Xiaojiu said with concern, but a carefree smile appeared on her face. She had never won a verbal argument with her before. She didn't expect that she would be defeated by her today. Wan Ling came back to her senses. She couldn't help but stare at the other party's chest. She forced a smile and said, "Nothing, I suddenly thought of something." Long Xiaojiu said, "Oh," and suddenly asked curiously, "Why are you bathing in a doo-doo? Are you shy to see us naked?" "Hehe. This water monster's cold." Wan Ling smiled absent-mindedly. "Miss Wan, you're wrong. It's uncomfortable to wear clothes in the water." Long Xiaojiu turned behind Wan Ling and said, "Come, I'll help you take it off." "It's okay. It's fine like this." Wan Ling hugged her chest and turned to avoid. However, the more she avoided, the more Long Xiaojiu wanted to see her look after being exposed. It seemed that she couldn't wait to take off her doo-doo. Ignoring the other party's repeated rejection, she stuck close to her and said kindly, "It's okay. It's nothing. I'll help you." As a result, Wan Ling was forced to the edge of the pool and had nowhere to retreat. Long Xiaojiu's hand touched her again. She immediately shouted in embarrassment and anger, "Get lost. Get lost." She had never been so unconfident before, but because of Long Xiaojiu's nonsensical words, she immediately became powerless to fight back. In front of Long Xiaojiu, she was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Wan Ling came out of the water in a fluster and embarrassment. She quickly dried herself, took out her clothes and put them on hastily. As she walked, she tidied up her clothes and left in a hurry. Long Xiaojiu was stunned in the pool. Then a smile appeared on her face. The more she smiled, the more complacent she became. She laughed unrestrainedly until she was almost out of breath. Hugging her jiggling breasts, she laughed so hard that she bent forward and backward. On the other side, the 5 men who were chatting and taking a bath were suddenly startled by Wan Ling's scream. They looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Yu Qianchou narrowed his eyes. No matter how he heard it, it sounded like the cry of a pervert. Could it be that some shameless person came here to peep? "Everyone. I'm sorry, I'll make a move first." Guang Mianzu cupped his hands at them and quickly put on his clothes. Just as he reached the underground passage, he saw Wan Ling running out with tears in her eyes. He couldn't help but be stunned. The demoness Wan Ling was actually crying? Guang Mianzu rushed to the end of the passage in a hurry and stopped in front of the door. After all, this was a place for women to bathe. It wasn't good to barge in. At this moment, Long Xiaojiu's complacent and carefree laughter came from inside. Guang Mianzu hadn't heard her laugh like this for a long time. Things seemed a little strange. He stood outside and shouted anxiously, "Little Jiu Air, what's wrong?" "Nothing, I'm fine." "Why did you come here? This is a place for women to bathe. What are you doing here? Don't come in." Long Xiaojiu's voice came from inside. Guang Mianzu was stunned. He stood outside and said awkwardly, "Little Jiu Air, don't misunderstand. I just saw Wan Ling crying and ran out. I thought something happened here, so..." "She cried?" Long Xiaojiu's tone was very surprised. Then she giggled until she was out of breath. "All right, don't stand outside anymore. Otherwise I'll feel uncomfortable all over. Let me soak in some more. The World Chamber of Commerce's mountain spring is indeed very comfortable. Then call me if you need anything. I won't go too far. After Guang Yanzu shouted, he listened for a while. Seeing that the person inside ignored him, he could only sigh and turn to leave. When he reached the end of the passage, he looked at the male bathroom in front of him. He felt that it wasn't appropriate to go back now. He simply stood against the wall and waited quietly. At this moment, Long Xiaoju was happily soaking in the water. After leisurely and contented in the pool for a while, she suddenly took off her underwear and wandered around in the water naked. She constantly scrutinized her body and found that the places that should be protruding were protruding, the places that should be perky were protruding, and the places that should be thin were thin. This was the first time she was so satisfied with her body. She caressed her curves with an infatuated expression. In the male bathroom, Yu Qianchou jumped out of the pool while cursing. He took out his clothes and prepared to wear them. Shui Mingqing also jumped out of the pool. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong looked at each other. Du Feng asked curiously, "Why are the two of you in such a hurry?" Yu Qianchou lifted his clothes and glanced at the two indifferent people. He said in a bad mood, "Didn't the two of you hear the scream just now?" Du Feng and Hui Yunlong chuckled. Du Feng said with a smile, "Brother Yu, if that's what you're doing, then I advise you not to go. Let them solve it themselves. Otherwise you won't know who to help later." "What do you mean?" Yu Qianchou asked suspiciously. Shui Mingqing was also confused. There were some things that he, who was once a low-level disciple, had never heard of. Guang Yanzu was here just now, so it wasn't easy to say some things. Come down, come down. The two of you come down. You'll understand after listening to me." Hui Yunlong waved his hands as he lay comfortably in the pool. The two of them walked back into the water in bewilderment. Hui Yunlong then told them about the grudge between Wan Ling and Long Xiaojie with a grin. After he was done, he smiled and said, "That's why these two women will quarrel whenever they meet. This is very normal and outsiders can't interfere." Yu Qianchou and Shui Mingqing looked at each other speechlessly. They didn't expect Wan Ling, who looked like a decent person, to actually like to steal other people's men. Based on her qualifications, there should be many men who like her. Why would she do such a perverted thing? Du Feng smiled and continued, "Brother Yu, there are rumors that you and Wan Ling have an affair. They say that you're living off a woman. They say that the money for you to establish the World Chamber of Commerce was provided by Wan Ling. However, I don't think so. What I don't understand is, why did Wan Ling hold your hand in public that day? What's the relationship between you two?" Yu Qianchou was completely speechless. He really didn't know what to say. Speaking of which, the money to establish the World Chamber of Commerce was really provided by Wan Ling. He paused and scolded loudly, "Who the F***ck is spreading rumors? I'm a righteous gentleman. I just know Wan Ling. It's not as dirty as you think." Seeing him get anxious, the others laughed and let it go. Actually, no one took it seriously. After a while, Yu Qianchou got to the main topic and said to Shui Mingqing, "Brother Shui, I have something to trouble you to pass on when you see your master." "What is it?" Shui Mingqing asked. Yu Qianchou leaned on the side of the pool with his hands on both sides and said slowly, "My World Chamber of Commerce's cultivation is limited. Even if we want to do big business, our strength is limited. Therefore, we're preparing to do some small business. Help me ask your master. I want to purchase a large amount of immortal pills from Skyward Palace and sell them at the World Chamber of Commerce to earn a bit of the price difference. Help me tell your master about this. If there's a possibility of cooperation, I'll personally go and talk to him." "No problem. I'll talk to master when I get back." Shui Mingqing nodded. Hui Yunlong, who was at the side, immediately got angry and shouted, "Brother Yu, why don't you talk to my mythical fire palace? You can totally buy immortal weapons from my mythical fire palace and sell them at the World Chamber of Commerce to earn the price difference. Don't worry. It's only a matter of time. Currently, my World Chamber of Commerce's financial resources are limited. We'll do it one by one." Yu Qianchou waved his hand and suddenly frowned. He looked at Du Feng and Hui Yunlong and asked curiously, "Haven't you two been chasing Mu Tianjiao for a long time? With your status in the immortal world, you should have caught up long ago. Why did the great commander of the immortal palace Wu Xiong interfere?" As soon as he said this, the two's faces were filled with bitterness. Shui Mingqing was a little curious. He didn't expect these two fellows to have chased Mu Tianjiao. Du Feng shook his head slowly and said, "Brother, you don't mention it anymore. Now that she's taken, there's no point in talking about it anymore. Otherwise, it'll cause unnecessary trouble." Hui Yunlong, who was at the side, suddenly dived into the water. He held his head in the water for a while before popping his head out. He shook his head so hard that water splashed everywhere. He laughed loudly and said, "If you want to blame something, blame it on our two families not being strong enough. It's normal that she doesn't like us. The entire immortal world respects the immortal palace. To be able to find someone from the immortal palace as a backer, others can't even beg for it. What else can we say? After all, we're friends. We can only wish her well." Yu Qianchou could hear a bit of helplessness and strong jealousy in their words. The meaning was very obvious. It was nothing more than saying that Mu Tianjiao had taken a fancy to the power of the immortal palace and had rejected them. But Yu Qianchou frowned when he thought about it. He felt that Mu Tianjiao shouldn't be that kind of person. Mu Tianjiao was a proud and strong-willed woman. She didn't seem like the kind of woman who would be shameless for glory and wealth. This was what made her attractive. Otherwise, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong wouldn't have taken a fancy to her, and she wouldn't have come all the way to the World Chamber of Commerce to bow down and congratulate them. Chapter 890. With her current status as Wu Xiong's woman, she didn't need to care about a small world commerce chamber. Now that she was here, Yu Qianchou had a better impression of himself. He sneered at himself for being afraid of retaliation for rejecting the other party's love. Yu Qianchou felt that there must be some unknown inside story and wondered if he should ask Mu Tianjiao if there was a chance. In reality, they were overcomplicating the problem. Mu Tianjiao just couldn't handle the pressure from Immortal Palace. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were a little depressed because they brought up the topic of Mu Tianjiao. Since Mu Tianjiao had already become Wu Xiong's woman, Yu Qianchou couldn't say anything else. The atmosphere immediately became a little depressing. After they casually soaked in the hot spring, they got up. After putting on their clothes, they walked out and saw Long Xiaojiu coming out as well. When they met, the men noticed that Long Xiaojiu was full of energy and radiant after her bath. They were all surprised by the miraculous effects of the spring bath. They couldn't help but look at each other and realize that the men hadn't changed much. "Is Wan Ling still soaking in there?" Yu Qianchou looked at the other end of the tunnel and asked. Long Xiaojiu chuckled and said, "She encountered something unhappy, so she left first." The men looked at each other and guessed that the two women might be fighting again. Yu Qianchou didn't say anything and led them out of the underground. After coming out, Shui Mingqing remembered what Yu Qianchou had told him and bade farewell to everyone. Everyone thought that Wan Ling had left, but when they returned to the 6th floor, they found Wan Ling and Mu Tianjiao sitting opposite each other and chatting happily. When the two women saw them return, they stood up to greet them. Long Xiaojiu couldn't help but frown when she saw that Wan Ling seemed to be fine. The sky was already close to dusk, and the guests were about to leave when Yu Qianchou smiled and urged them to stay. "My 6th floor has always been used to entertain guests, and I haven't used it even once. Everyone, please do me the honor. In the evening, I would like to invite all of you to the rooftop to watch the stars and admire the moon, and to taste my World Chamber of Commerce's barbecue and wine." Looking at the sky outside, Wan Ling hesitated before she said, "It's fine with us, but Sister Tianjiao's identity is a little sensitive. I'm afraid it won't be convenient for her to spend the night with a bunch of men." Yu Qianchou was stunned. "What does that have to do with anything? Aren't you and Miss Long a woman?" Glancing at Long Xiaojiu, Wan Ling smiled. "Miss Long and I don't have a good reputation in this field. I'm afraid that we might implicate Sister Tianjiao." She was really self-aware, but Long Xiaojiu was angered by her. It was all thanks to her that she was able to achieve her current reputation. They all knew the meaning of her words. Mu Tianjiao's current identity was indeed very sensitive. A little bit of gossip could cause trouble. If Su Yi didn't return it and mixed with two women who were fighting over a man, who knew what kind of rumors would spread? Gossip was a fearful thing. Hearing this, Yu Qianchou felt a toothache. In his mind, this was making a mountain out of a molehill, but if he was serious here, there were indeed many things to pay attention to. Seeing that he was having a headache, Du Feng smiled and said, "Brother Yu, you don't have to worry too much. With so many people in the World Chamber of Commerce, it's not like you can't find a woman. Just hire one to accompany the guests. With a woman by your side, you can more or less avoid suspicion." Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. There were also several women in the World Chamber of Commerce. After thinking about it, he still felt that it was most suitable for Lu Yanqing to accompany a guest like Mu Tianjiao. There was no need to do anything, just be a vase. In any case, it was just a decoration. This was because he found that other than treating people, Lu Yanqing basically couldn't do anything. Furthermore, her ability to handle things was extremely poor. He really didn't know how she had survived for so many years. Just like now, when she was given some work to do, she always had to get Wen Lanfeng's help in order to do it well. Just a small matter would require 2 people. At this moment, someone came down to report that 2 of Mu Tianjiao's guards had come to pick her up. Yu Qianzhou looked at Mu Tianjiao's intentions, then instructed his subordinate, invite them up and also call Lu Yanqing over. That person agreed and left. Not long later, the 2 golden-robed men arrived. Mu Tianjiao cupped her hands and bowed, I won't be leaving today. I'll stay at the World Chamber of Commerce for the night and leave tomorrow. I'll have to trouble the 2 of you to stay here for the night. The 2 golden-robed men cupped their hands in agreement. They had no objections. They were originally sent by Wu Xiong to protect Mu Tianjiao or listen to her orders, so they had no right to control Mu Tianjiao's freedom. Mu Tianjiao then said to Yu Qianzhou with a smile, I'll have to trouble sect leader Yu to arrange 2 rooms for them. Yu Qianzhou nodded and said, since they were sent by the commander to protect you, then arrange for them to be on the left and right side of your room. What do you think? Mu Tianjiao knew that he was using this to get Wu Xiong's people to avoid arousing suspicion, so she agreed. The 2 maintained a certain level of respect in their words and actions. In reality, Yu Qianzhou hated doing this kind of thing the most, because he knew that the 2 of them couldn't be pure friends. He was a man and the other was Wu Xiong's woman. Even if the other party condescended to treat him, he still had to keep his distance. Even if the other party wasn't Wu Xiong's woman, imagine a man always maintaining a close friendship with someone else's wife? Pure friendship? In his previous life, there might be quite a few pure and upright gentlemen who would agree with this reason. Of course, the important premise was that the other party's wife had to be ugly, making it hard for others to lay their hands on her. Otherwise, if pure and upright gentlemen saw the 2 of them being too close, there would inevitably be times when their stomachs would bubble. However, in this era where both men and women had long hair, if you were too close to someone else's wife, not to mention everything else, just their saliva could drown you. Moreover, Yu Qianzhou himself didn't believe that handsome men and beautiful women would always stick together and have a pure friendship. Perhaps there might be, but unfortunately he had never encountered such a thing. Even if nothing happened, the hearts of both men and women would still itch. Of course, this was mainly because he wasn't broad-minded enough, always measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. There was no helping it. He felt like he was one of the many wolves wearing sheep's clothing, but deep down he was still a wolf. He also always imagined that he was the only wolf in the world and that everyone else was a pure lamb. Therefore he consciously maintained an appropriate distance from Mu Tianjiao. Naturally, he took a fancy to Mu Tianjiao's identity and hoped that she could help him at a critical moment. And Mu Tianjiao condescended to come here, hoping to give the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce an escape route in the uncertain future. In reality, Du Feng and the others also tried their best to keep their distance from Mu Tianjiao. Of course, women like Wan Ling didn't have such scruples. Instead, the closer the relationship, the better. Not long after, Lu Yanqing slowly arrived. Lu Yanqing's arrival immediately caused the eyes of the guests in the living room to light up. Although Du Feng and the others had entered the Divine Ruin realm before, because Lu Yanqing didn't like to fight and kill, she always hid behind the lords of the various countries when they appeared. In addition, she knew that her appearance was outstanding, so when there were too many people she tried her best not to show her face so no one, including Mu Tianjiao, had seen her. This is Lu Yanqing. After Yu Qianzhou introduced Lu Yanqing to everyone, he then introduced Mu Tianjiao to Lu Yanqing. This is the fiancée of the Immortal Palace's External Affairs Commander Wu Xiong. It's inconvenient for her to stay with us men, so you should stay close to her before she leaves. Lu Yanqing faintly smiled at everyone. This smile immediately made Du Feng and Hui Yunlong unable to move their eyes away. Wan Ling and the other women suddenly felt ashamed of their inferiority. They didn't expect the World Chamber of Commerce to have such a beautiful woman. Help me greet the guests. Yu Qianzhou instructed Lu Yanqing, then cupped his hands towards the crowd and said, Everyone, please take a seat, I have something to do, I'll be right back. The few of them were a little absent-minded when they saw Lu Yanqing, and didn't notice that Yu Qianqiu had left. After Yu Qianqiu left, he went straight to the top floor. He didn't see Wei Chuanqiu at first, but later on he felt that it was a little strange. This guy always liked to follow behind him, but now that half a day had passed he still hadn't seen him. He had noticed it when he came up from below, but he didn't see Wei Chuanqiu. Now he suspected that Wei Chuanqiu was with Yun Peng. As he expected, when he reached the top floor, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng were standing side by side at the edge of the railing. Yu Qianqiu was suspicious in his heart. Why was this old fellow so patient today to accompany Yun Peng on guard? As soon as he appeared, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng also turned to look. Without waiting for the smiling Yu Qianqiu to speak, Wei Chuanqiu was already waving at him. Yu Qianqiu, I was just looking for you. Yu Qianqiu was startled and found that both of their faces were a little serious. After approaching the two of them, he asked suspiciously, "Looking for me? What's the matter?" Wei Chuanqiu was silent for a moment, then said solemnly, "After coming back, I have been discussing this matter with Yun Peng. Because this matter is of great importance, Yun Peng also thought that he should find you to clarify this matter. Although I don't know if you will answer honestly, I still have to ask you." Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed and he vaguely guessed what was going on. Before he didn't pay attention, but after doing that he regretted it a little. But after thinking about it, there was nothing to regret. Hiding everything was not a solution after all. He couldn't just take a beating and not fight back. "What's the matter? You make it sound like it's something serious," Yu Qianqiu said with a puzzled expression. "Do you still remember the myriad swords burst that you used in the battle earlier?" Wei Chuanqiu said word by word. "Right now there are people who suspect that you are related to the myriad swords demon lord. You should also know that the immortal world and the netherworld cannot tolerate the remnants of the myriad swords demon lord." "Suspect that I am related to the myriad swords demon lord?" Yu Qianqiu pointed at his own nose as if he heard the world's funniest joke and said, "I actually hope that I can be related to the myriad swords demon lord, but it is a pity that it is impossible. The myriad swords demon lord has been dead for so many years. Who is so bored to actually connect me with the myriad swords demon lord?" The Chamber of Commerce Alliance's Great Bright Wheel Controller. Wei Chuanqiu's green brows knitted together and her expression was abnormally serious. "In reality, you need to go and explain to him. We are only asking you to have an idea in our hearts so that we can prepare early. We have no ill intentions towards you." Saying that, she waved her hand and pointed around. "Do you believe that the Chamber of Commerce Alliance has already arranged people around here? If it wasn't for the two of us, the Great Bright Wheel Controller would have already taken action. In short, if you don't give him a satisfactory answer, it is impossible for you to leave the hallucination immortal city." Chapter 891. The sky gradually darkened. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around on the rooftop, scanning his surroundings. Although he didn't see anyone from the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, since Wei Chuanqiu had said this, it must be true that someone was watching him. "I really have nothing to do with the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch." Yu Qianqiu shook his head helplessly. A person who's been dead for God knows how many years can still cause such a commotion. This Thousand Swords Demon Monarch didn't die in vain. What does the Great Bright Wheel Wielder want to know? "I want to know why you can control 10,000 swords." A voice came from behind him. Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned his head and saw a thin, golden-robed Deming appear behind him without him noticing. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng's expressions were normal. Clearly they already knew that the Great Bright Wheel was here. "Greetings to the Great Bright Wheel Wielder." Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and explained, "I'm just a vagrant cultivator with slightly better luck. I really have nothing to do with the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch." The Great Bright Wheel coldly interrupted, "No one cares about your background and luck. I don't want to hear this, and the Immortal Emperor won't listen to this nonsense. No matter how noble your background is, it means nothing to him. Don't beat around the bush. Just explain clearly why you can control 10,000 swords like the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch." Then what should he say? Yu Qianqiu was startled. There was such a person in this world. A person who didn't care about the cause and effect and only wanted the final answer. Was this person still human? He couldn't help but look at Wei Chuanqiu. Wei Chuanqiu seemed to see through his doubts and transmitted, "There's nothing strange. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai has ruled the immortal world for so long. There are very few things that can interest him. I just heard from the Great Bright Wheel that Immortal Emperor Jin Tai doesn't care about anything. Most of the things are handled by his subordinates. He only cares about the final result. If anyone dares to lie to him, he will kill them once he finds out. Seems like a poor fellow who has lost the joy of life. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "The sword technique I'm practicing is called Gui Yuan sword technique. It has nothing to do with the legendary Myriad Swords Demon Monarch. Is that okay?" Gui Yuan sword technique? The three of them pondered for a moment. They seemed to have never heard of this technique before. The Great Bright Wheel then asked simply, "How can you prove that what you said is true?" Yu Qianqiu was prepared for this. He took out a jade archive and handed it over. "This is the Gui Yuan sword technique that I'm practicing. If you don't believe me, you can verify it." De Mingluan took the jade archive and examined it. He confirmed that it was indeed a sword technique. He didn't care whether Yu Qianqiu agreed to it or not. He put it away and said, "It's hard to tell if it's real or fake. I'll keep it for now. If I can confirm that this sword technique can truly control 10,000 swords, I'll send someone to return it to you." Wei Chuanqiu frowned and said, "Great Bright Wheel, I'm afraid that's not appropriate. A cultivation technique is the foundation of a cultivator. It's the most important thing to keep a secret. In order to prove his innocence, he's already taken it out for you to see. You still don't believe him? You still want to take it away?" To the Immortal Palace, as long as the Immortal Palace needs it, they have the right to pry into any secret in the immortal realm, the Great Bright Wheel said indifferently. "You." Wei Chuanqiu was instantly enraged. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly pulled him back and said, "This sword art is actually just a facade. The 10,000 swords might look quite frightening, but it's actually just for show. It doesn't have much power at all. If you want to take it, then take it. As long as you can prove my innocence, you don't have to return it. Anyway, I've made a few copies here." Actually, the sword technique he was practicing was modified. The one he gave to the Great Bright Wheel was the original version of the supporting Immortals Island. It didn't matter if he wanted it or not. Even if he took 10,000 steps back, it was necessary to sacrifice something in exchange for his innocence. After exchanging some pleasantries, Wei Chuanqiu suddenly said to Yu Qianqiu, "Go on with your business. We have some private things to talk about." Yu Qianqiu glanced at the three, cupped his fists and left with a stomach full of complaints. He didn't know what these three old fellows were plotting. They actually wanted him to leave. After watching him leave, Wei Chuanqiu said with a worried expression, "Great Bright Wheel, tell me honestly, will Immortal Emperor Jin Taishiang believe it?" "Whether or not Immortal Emperor Jin Taishiang believes it depends on the attitude of the two of you," the Great Bright Wheel said indifferently. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other in confusion. Wei Chuanqiu asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" "Nothing." The Great Bright Wheel slowly turned around and placed his hands on the white jade railing. He silently stared at the crescent moon that shone with silver radiance for a while before asking, "Yun Peng has always been cultivating in White Cloud Mountain, and you have disappeared for so many years. What I don't understand is why the two of you would appear in such a manner to serve Yu Qianqiu. What's his background to be worthy of you doing this? What's the relationship between the two of you? For the sake of Yu Qianqiu, is it really worth it for the two of you to involve yourselves in this matter? If he really is related to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, you should know what the consequences are." Yun Peng's calm gaze flickered as he stared at the Great Bright Wheel. Wei Chuanqiu frowned and said, "Didn't Yu Qianqiu even take out his own cultivation technique? I don't think it's fake. With this kind of irrefutable evidence, how can we not prove that he's related to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord?" "Irrefutable evidence? You mean this?" The Great Bright Wheel, who had both hands on the white jade railing, turned around and took out the jade archive that Yu Qianqiu had given him. In front of Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng, he crushed it into powder. Wei Chuanqiu exclaimed, "Great Bright Wheel, what do you mean by this?" "What do you think I mean?" The Great Bright Wheel snorted coldly, "So what if it's irrefutable evidence? Do you really think that the Immortal Emperor Jin Tai would go through so much trouble for the sake of a mere Yu Qianqiu? I can tell you without a doubt that he would rather kill the wrong person than let him off. 3 days. Within 3 days the news will definitely reach his ears, and within these 3 days he will be waiting for news from me. If he doesn't hear from me within 3 days, then 3 days later, the Immortal Palace enforcers will depart from the Immortal Palace. Needless to say, Yu Qianqiu's death is certain. The entire World Commerce Chamber of Commerce will also face a massacre, including those who are close to him. Not a single one of them will survive. And because of my incompetence, I will also be punished. The exceptionally enchanting moonlight instantly turned cold and gloomy. At least that was what Yun Ping and Wei Chunqiu felt at this moment. They were among those who were close to Yu Qianqiu, but they too would not be able to escape death. After a moment of silence on the cold rooftop, Wei Chunqiu broke the silence, saying, "Then why did you want Yu Qianqiu to give a reasonable explanation? Isn't this unnecessary?" The great bright wheel suddenly turned and faced the moonlit mountains outside. He slowly said, "I just wanted to test him. At least let me die in peace." The two at the side looked at each other, not knowing why he would say such a thing. Yun Peng, who had been silent all this time, said coldly, "It's not that serious. Didn't you join the Immortal Palace to live well? Now that you are in charge of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, the word, death, is too far away from you." The rooftop sank into a brief silence. The great bright wheel slowly closed his eyes. Yun Ping, back then the three of us settled our debts of gratitude and revenge in the immortal world. You should know how many people we offended. At that time our situation was already precarious. The Immortal Palace recruited us because of this. Do you think I don't want to be free? Do you think I don't want to be free? If one of you had been willing to accept the Immortal Palace's recruitment, I definitely wouldn't have accepted it. However, the two of you refused to join the Immortal Palace no matter what, so I was the unlucky one. What do you mean? Wei Chunqiu asked in confusion. What does whether we join the Immortal Palace have to do with whether you join the Immortal Palace or not? The great bright wheel closed his eyes and didn't speak. It seemed like he didn't want to explain anymore. Yun Peng's body shook. He stared at the great bright wheel and said, "Looks like we have misunderstood you all these years. But why didn't you explain back then?" The great bright wheel opened his eyes and looked into the dark night. He smiled bitterly and said, "If I really explained it back then, I'm afraid the two of you would have fought to join. I wanted to explain it to you later, but you didn't even give me a chance. Later, because of the fierce internal strife in the Immortal Palace, I thought it would be better not to contact you too, lest I hurt you." Yun Ping wasn't good at expressing his emotions. He just nodded slightly to show that he understood. Wei Chunqiu's head kept shaking left and right. He looked from one to the other and pulled his hair with both hands. He said anxiously, "What are you two talking about? Why don't I understand? Aren't you very good at cheating?" Yun Peng was sarcastic, but he still reminded him in the end, "Back then we had too many enemies and were chased everywhere. Later he joined the Immortal Palace and we immediately became much more relaxed. We didn't have to run for our lives anymore." At this point Wei Chunqiu wasn't stupid. Combining what the two had just said, the misunderstandings from the past immediately disappeared. In short, the great bright wheel had joined the Immortal Palace because he had no choice. They had caused too much trouble and were chased every 2 or 3 days. In the end they had provoked more and more experts. Seeing that everyone was about to die, the Immortal Palace had extended an olive branch to them. However, Yun Peng and Wei Chunqiu would rather die than submit. They were unwilling to join the Immortal Palace and be restrained. As a good brother, the great bright wheel naturally knew the knot in the hearts of the two brothers. This was because the Immortal Palace was the place with the most tamed immortal beasts in the entire immortal world. They were also immortal beasts, so they didn't like the Immortal Palace. Although the great bright wheel didn't want to be restrained, he had no choice. In order to protect his life and his brothers, he could only compromise. Who knew that because of this the brothers wouldn't get along? They had been misunderstood for so long. Today the injustice was cleared. "Yun Ping, do you think this guy joined the Immortal Palace to save his life because he couldn't escape as fast as the two of us?" Wei Chunqiu laughed. Yun Ping, who was beside him, nodded. Under the starry sky, the three of them unknowingly stood side by side in front of the white jade railing. Just like many years ago, a bright moon shone in the sky and the shadows of green and jade wings followed. Chapter 892. With the years of estrangement gone, the three of them stood side by side in front of the white jade railing and immediately began to talk about everything. Wei Chunqiu was puzzled and asked, "You just said that Jin Taixiang will have to see our attitudes if he doesn't believe you. What do you mean by that? If Yu Qianqiu is not closely related to the two of you, What does his life or death have to do with me? What does the life or death of others have to do with me? Although the two of you are with him with my current position in the Immortal Palace, it is not difficult to protect the two of you. Demingluan looked left and right and sighed. If the two of you really have an extraordinary relationship with him, then I can only do my best to be a guarantor in front of Jin Taixiang and guarantee that Yu Qianqiu has nothing to do with the Demon Lord of Thousand Swords. Yun Peng was not good with words and tilted his head to look at Wei Chuanqiu, but Wei Chuanqiu frowned and did not say anything. In fact, Demingluan had another hidden meaning that even if he were to be a guarantor in front of immortal Emperor Jin Tai might not give him face and might even implicate him. There are some things that I can't tell you now. Let's talk about it when the time is right. In short, Yu Qianqiu is very important now and cannot die. Wei Chuanqiu muttered slowly. It was not that he wanted to hide it from the two of them, but the Thousand Demon Heart Sutra had too many implications. Although the Demon Lord of Thousand Swords was powerful, he was certainly not a match for an expert like the Demon God. Once the 10,000 Demonic Heart Sutra written by Taishu Zheng, who was on the same level as the Devil God, was exposed, no one would be able to have an easy time. At that time, Jin Tai would probably kill everyone who was involved and would not show any mercy. He did not want Yun Peng and Demingluan to worry about the matter until he had absolute confidence that it could be resolved. In that case, I will personally go to the Immortal Palace and meet the Immortal Emperor to be a guarantor for Yu Qianqiu. Demingluan said lightly. Yun Peng suddenly turned and asked, "Will there be any danger?" Wei Chuanqiu also looked over and Demingluan shook his head. There shouldn't be any problems. After all, he has served Jin Taixiang for so many years. However, if one day it is proven that this Yu Qianqiu is indeed related to the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch, then we will be out of luck. He purposely spoke casually, but in reality he had no confidence in meeting Jin Tai. The main reason was that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch was truly a taboo to Jin Tai. If not for the fact that the 10,000 Swords Demon Lord was already dead, the Great Bright Will wouldn't even need to think about it. They wouldn't even need to look for Jin Tai. They could just escape together. Before he left, Demingluan suddenly took out an item and handed it to Wei Chuanqiu, saying, "After being in charge of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance for so many years, it's not like I've come back empty-handed. I accidentally stumbled upon this." With that said, it seemed like he didn't want to see anything else and turned into a stream of light and flew away. Wei Chuanqiu's little eyes widened, and in that instant her eyes were filled with tears. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the thing in her palm and muttered absent-mindedly, "Xiao Yu." Yun Peng tilted his head to take a look, and his pupils immediately shrank. This was a small blue bat jade pendant that was not even half the size of a palm. Although it was carved with the same ferocious face as Wei Chuanqiu's original form, it was small and exquisite and had many cute points. Others didn't know what this blue bat jade pendant meant, but Yun Peng and the Great Bright Wheel were very clear about it. Back then, Wei Chuanqiu wasn't a loner. He had a wife and a daughter. Later on, because Wei Chuanqiu caused some trouble, his enemies came looking for him. Coincidentally, Wei Chuanqiu wasn't around, so his wife and daughter were not spared. It was also because of this that the furious Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng and the Great Bright Wheel annihilated the entire enemy's family. This also implicated more and more trouble, and the three of them were constantly being pursued until the Great Bright Wheel joined the Immortal Palace. And this blue bat jade pendant was personally carved by Yun Peng, and he gave it to Wei Chuanqiu's daughter as a gift. Although this little thing wasn't worth much, it was something that Xiao Yu had always worn. It had been lost for many years, and she didn't expect that the Great Bright Wheel would find it. To Wei Chuanqiu it had an extraordinary meaning. To Yun Peng it also had an extraordinary meaning. Wu, Xiao Yu. Wei Chuanqiu sat on the rooftop and hugged the jade pendant with both hands as he cried his heart out. Yun Peng shook his head, sighing lightly. Knowing that Wei Chuanqiu needed to vent, he allowed Wei Chuanqiu to cry without stopping him. It was fortunate that the three of them had set up a soundproofing barrier before their conversation. Otherwise it would have alerted the entire World Commerce Hall. As the sky darkened, passing by the 6th floor, Yu Qianqiu saw that Mu Tianjiao's group was chatting happily with Lu Yanqing, so he did not disturb them. Instead he went down to the trading center below. Although there were still quite a lot of people here, it was obvious that there were fewer people than during the day. After strolling from the 1st floor back to the 5th floor, Yu Qianqiu pushed open the side hall's door and walked in. Jing Yuankong, who was settling accounts inside, quickly stood up seeing Huang Xiaolong's arrival. Yu Qianqiu looked out the transparent crystal window, taking in the scene outside with a smile. How's the situation? Up until now we've sold 30 billion divine-grade spirit stones worth of herbs. Jing Yuankong answered excitedly. He was used to seeing spirit stones in the human world's World Commerce Hall, but he had never seen so many spirit stones. Only 30 billion? Yu Qianqiu's brows wrinkled slightly. The immortal herbs he put up for sale were valued at around 80 billion, which meant that they hadn't even reached half of the sales. It's like this. Jing Yuankong immediately explained. There are many immortal herbs that aren't sold in high quantities. On the contrary, the higher the value, the better they sell. Should we put up some good immortal herbs for sale? Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment, then slowly shook his head. No need, we'll slowly sell the rest of the immortal herbs. We'll sell them for a month. It's better if we can sell them all, but it's fine if we can't. We also pay attention to the method of seeking wealth. There's no need to rush, otherwise going too far is as bad as falling short. He was well aware that putting up so many immortal herbs was already too conspicuous. If there was a steady stream of good stuff appearing on the shelves, it would be hard not to arouse suspicion. Only by stopping in moderation would they be able to handle the situation with ease. On top of that, the Celestial Ruin Realm had just opened so they could cover it up. Jing Yuankong immediately understood Huang Xiaolong's meaning, remembering that they had just established a foothold in the immortal world. If they acted too conspicuously, it would only bring trouble to themselves. Jing Yuankong immediately nodded. Understood, I'll arrange for all the immortal herbs to be sold on the first floor tomorrow. You know this better than me, you can decide how to sell the immortal herbs. Yu Qianqiu said a few words, then returned to the 6th floor with his hands clasped behind his back. Inside the everlasting trade hall, for some unknown reason, the elders of the 4 sects who had supported Yu Qianqiu earlier in the day were gathered together again, each of them wearing a worried expression. After a moment of silence, Wan Gi said solemnly, although his methods are similar to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord's, that doesn't prove that he's related to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. Moreover, the Myriad Swords Demon Lord has been dead for a long time. Yifuzi shook his head slowly. Nothing is absolute. Maybe he picked up the Myriad Swords Demon Lord's cultivation technique and became the Myriad Swords Demon Lord's disciple. Du Kairen, who was sitting at the side, snorted coldly. Whether Yu Qianqiu is related to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord or not is secondary. The key is Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. He's a person who can't tolerate sand in his eyes. He won't allow another Myriad Swords Demon Lord to appear in the immortal world. Anything that can threaten him will be eradicated by him. This is an undeniable fact. Today when we went to support Yu Qianqiu's event, we've undoubtedly dragged the 4 sects into the water, more or less implicated. The corner of Huo Lianqing's mouth twitched. Could it be that just because we supported Yu Qianqiu's event, the immortal emperor is going to implicate the 4 of us? Du Kairen said in a deep voice. It's precisely because we are the 4 great sects and not some ordinary small sect that we came to support a small world commerce association. This is the biggest reason for suspicion. The immortal emperor is a temperamental person. No one knows what he is thinking. If he really suspects us, then how could he give us a chance to explain? He simply doesn't put our 4 clans in his eyes. If he wants to eradicate us, it would only take a single word from him. Everyone's expressions changed and became unsightly. Wan Gui sighed softly. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse, and if it's a curse, we can't avoid it. It's not a solution for us to make wild guesses here. We can only take one step at a time. Right now, it's more important to call back those juniors and avoid arousing suspicion. Don't get too entangled with Yu Qianqiu. Secondly, everyone should quickly report this matter to their sects and make preparations early. Otherwise, when disaster strikes, we won't be caught unprepared. On the rooftop of the World Commerce Association, the aroma of barbecued meat and fine wine filled the air again. Yu Qianqiu once again displayed his barbecue skills. As he fiddled with the barbecue, Yu Qianqiu felt a little strange. He saw Wei Chuanqiu sitting by the white jade railing in the distance, his head buried in something, while Yun Peng silently stood by his side. Not long after, the food that Yu Qianqiu had meticulously prepared was placed on everyone's table. Just as everyone was about to eat heartily, someone came up from downstairs and reported to Yu Qianqiu with cupped fists. Sect Master. Wan Gu Tong Mythical Fire Palace and Spirit Cultivation Sect have all sent people over, saying that they have important matters to attend to and ask their disciples to return quickly. Wan Ling and the others looked at each other, not knowing what had happened. Why did the three great sects all send people to summon them? They guessed that something big must have happened and couldn't sit still anymore. They all stood up and left without eating anything. Thus only Yu Qianchou, Mu Tianjiao, Lu Yanqing and Long Xiaojie were left. But not long after, someone came to report that the Hidden Dragon Manor had also sent people to urge Long Xiaojie to return quickly. Seeing that Long Xiaojie had also left, Yu Qianchou immediately felt a little strange. He frowned and said, "All the sects said something happened. Could it be that something big happened in the immortal world?" Mu Tianjiao and Lu Yanqing looked at each other. They were even more confused. Because the three of them had their own thoughts, the barbecue didn't taste good. In the end, Lu Yanqing still accompanied Mu Tianjiao to rest. Only then did Yu Qianchou walk over to where Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu were. When he barged into the soundproofing barrier, he discovered Wei Chuanqiu sitting on the ground, sobbing. He immediately cried out in alarm, "Bat King Wei, what's wrong? Did Great Bright Will hit you?" Chapter 893. Wei Chuanqiu didn't react to his words and continued to sit there crying. Yun Peng on the other hand turned around and glared at him. Yu Qianchou shrank his neck slightly. "Senior Yun, what happened to him?" Yun Peng kept his mouth shut and did not answer, but Wei Chuanqiu's sobs kept bouncing out the word, "Xiao Yu." Yu Qianchou immediately squatted down beside him and asked curiously, "Bat King Wei, who is Xiao Yu? Is she your old lover?" Yun Peng couldn't bear it anymore and shouted, "Don't talk nonsense here, Xiao Yu is his daughter." "His daughter?" Yu Qianchou stood up and said in surprise, "His daughter is here? Where is she? Where is she? Is she beautiful? Don't tell me she's made from the same mold as the old bat." As he spoke he looked around. However, although there were constantly flowing lights in the dark night sky, how could he tell who was who? "Bastard." Yun Peng couldn't bear it anymore and roared, "His daughter has been dead for tens of thousands of years." Died for tens of thousands of years. Yu Qianchou was stunned. After a while he sat beside Wei Chuanqiu and patted his back, comforting him. "Bat King Wei, the dead can't come back to life, my condolences." It would have been better if he didn't comfort him, but once he did there was a problem. Wei Chuanqiu immediately wailed loudly, "Xiao Yu, Xiao Yu, it's father's fault. I've harmed you and your mother. What did I do to offend you?" Yu Qianchou only felt his eardrums tremble and his scalp go numb. He was speechless and quickly got up to stand beside Yun Peng. How did his daughter die? And what's going on with the great bright wheel manager of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance? Yu Qianchou picked his ears and asked Yun Peng. In the end he realized that Yun Peng didn't care about him at all. Instead he walked out of the soundproof enchantment and seemed to be concentrating on listening to something. Yu Qianchou was slightly taken aback. He listened attentively and immediately discovered that Wei Chuanqiu's loud cries were accompanied by the faint sounds of a zither. He also stepped out of the soundproof enchantment, and Wei Chuanqiu's cries were immediately cut off. In the quiet night, there was a faint singing sound that sounded like the spirits of a beautiful woman. It was very pleasant to listen to. The sound came from downstairs. "I have a flower that grows in my heart. No one understands true love." After Yu Qianchou heard it clearly, his expression twitched. He knew that it was Lu Yanqing who was playing and singing. Tilting his head to look at Yun Peng, he discovered that Yun Peng's usually calm face had a look of surprise, as if he had heard the sound of nature. Yu Qianchou looked at Wei Chuanqiu, who was still crying non-stop and was completely speechless. He realized that he had nothing in common with these two experts tonight, so he immediately flung his sleeves and left. Inside the Wan Gu Tong branch, Wan Ling was stunned after hearing Wan Gi's analysis. Then she covered her mouth and giggled, gasping for breath as she said, "You guys actually think that Yu Qianchou is related to the 10,000 Swords Demon Lord?" Wan Gi frowned, saying solemnly, "Wan Ling, regardless of whether the 10,000 Swords Demon Lord is related to Yu Qianchou or not, based on Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's cold-bloodedness, as long as there is such a possibility, he will be punished immediately. We have no choice but to take precautions. It's better to distance ourselves from him for now. Don't be stubborn, think about it carefully. I'm going to report this matter to the sect leader." Just as he was about to leave, he heard Wan Ling giggling behind him. "Elder, please stay, there's no need to report this matter to grandfather. Don't worry, Immortal Emperor Jin Tai will definitely not pursue this matter, and grandfather will not take it to heart." Wan Gi turned around, saying, "This matter is not a small matter. If something happens, no one can bear the responsibility. The sect leader has to make the decision himself." Finished, no matter how Wan Ling tried to persuade him, he directly left. Wan Ling could only shake her head helplessly. The reason why she was so calm in the face of chaos was because she knew that Yu Qiancho was Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's trusted spy. If she knew that Yu Qiancho was a fake, who knew if she would still be so calm? Not long after, Wan Gi returned with a puzzled expression. Wan Ling smiled at him, asking, "What is the sect leader's opinion?" Wan Gi shook his head in a muffled voice. When he contacted the sect leader to report this matter, Wan Bushing was only dazed for a moment before asking him what Wan Ling's opinion was. Wan Gi naturally conveyed Wan Ling's opinion to the sect leader, but Wan Bushing immediately expressed that Wan Ling could make the decision on this matter. "Wan Ling, is there an inside story behind this that I don't know?" Wan Gi asked suspiciously. Wan Ling shook her head with a smile and said, "Elder Wan, there are some things that you shouldn't ask. It won't do you any good if you know." The former immediately choked and became speechless. Although Wan Gi and Wan Ling had the same ancestor and were much older than Wan Ling, in reality Wan Ling was actually several generations older than Wan Gi. This kind of phenomenon was very common in the various sects and clans, and the reason for it was naturally because the lifespan of immortal cultivators was too long, and the time difference in carrying on the family line was too great. So the various sects in the immortal dimension would normally stop addressing each other according to seniority after a gap of 4 generations, and they would usually address each other by position or name. Of course, positions were not taken according to seniority, but according to cultivation and ability. From this, it could be seen that it would indeed be troublesome if everyone in the family became old fogies. However, it was human nature to have children, and even immortals were never tired of it. In the celestial bestowment state, in the sky above the main peak of the Paradise Immortal Realm, there was a majestic palace that shone with a golden light. The moment the great bright wheel flew into the mountain range of the Pure Bliss Immortal Realm, it was immediately subjected to layers of interrogation. However, with the golden sunset token in his hand, his journey could be said to be unimpeded, and he directly flew up to the half of the mountain peak that was floating in the air. The top of the mountain had been pushed to the ground, and the ground was paved with shiny golden bricks, forming a huge golden plaza. There were golden pillars, golden towers, golden arch bridges, and golden railings everywhere. In addition to the towering golden palace in the distance, this was a golden kingdom, a golden world. Demingluan didn't know why the immortal emperor liked gold so much, but he knew that other than the inner guards of the immortal palace, no one else was allowed to fly in the golden plaza. As soon as he landed in front of the righteous heaven gate, on this golden plaza, 2 golden-robed guards standing with their halberds raised immediately waved their spears to stop him. Demingluan pushed out a token that shone with golden light with a single palm, and the 2 guards immediately returned to their original positions. Flying was prohibited here, so the great bright wheel could only obediently walk along the main axis straight to the immortal palace in the distance. This was the main path to the immortal palace, and there were railings on both sides with all kinds of immortal beasts carved on them. After walking for a short while, he saw an expressionless person walking over from the direction of the immortal palace. Demingluan and that person were startled for a moment, then they both revealed a smile and walked face to face. That person was none other than the immortal palace's external affairs great commander Wu Xiong. The 2 of them had a good relationship in the immortal palace. "Brother Wu, long time no see." Demingluan cupped his hands and smiled. "I heard that you are about to get married, but I have seen your little wife in the illusion immortal city. You are a man, but you found a wife who looks like a spring onion. Aren't you afraid of crushing her? Don't make fun of me. When the time comes, you will definitely drink at the wedding." The short-bearded Wu Xiong smiled bitterly. Recently, there really were many people in the immortal palace who used this to make fun of him. He waved his hand and said, "Why did you come here for no reason? Are you looking for the immortal emperor?" "That's right." Demingluan smiled, but his eyebrows slightly moved. Who knew what he was thinking when he saw Wu Xiong? "Then there is no need to go to the immortal palace. I just went there and the immortal emperor is not there. He said he went to the newly built dancing immortal palace below. It just so happens that my wedding day is approaching and I want to ask for leave from the immortal emperor. Why don't we go together? Wu Xiong waved his hand and invited. What a coincidence, it just so happens to go there. De Mingluan smiled and the two of them walked out side by side. Just as De Mingluan was about to say what he was brewing in his stomach, Wu Xiong took the initiative to ask, as the leader of the Merchant Alliance, you rarely come back. Could it be that something big has happened? Something big has indeed happened. This matter might even involve the two of us. De Mingluan sighed. Wu Xiong stopped and squinted his eyes. Brother Mingluan, are you joking or trying to scare me? What kind of big matter could involve me? De Mingluan smiled bitterly and shook his head. He immediately told Wu Xiong about Yu Qianzhou's fight with someone in the illusionary immortal city. He emphasized the situation of Yu Qianzhou controlling the myriad swords. So this Yu Qianzhou is very likely a remnant of the myriad swords demon monarch. But what does this have to do with me? Wu Xiong didn't react at first, but his expression changed as if he thought of something. Originally, it had nothing to do with you and me. De Mingluan spread his palms and smiled bitterly. You should know that I was once close friends with Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu. But what I don't understand is that these two guys are actually together with Yu Qianzhou. Although these two guys aren't very polite to me now, I can't abandon our friendship and watch them die. That's why I took the risk to come to the Immortal Palace to see the Immortal Emperor. And I say your little wife Mu Tianjiao didn't stay at home. She just had to run to the illusionary immortal city to support Yu Qianzhou's World Merchant Association. She caused such a commotion that everyone in the world knows that your family is friends with Yu Qianzhou. I say, aren't you and your wife looking for trouble? She went to the illusionary immortal city with my permission. Wu Xiong's expression didn't look too good. He didn't expect to get into such trouble. He stared at De Mingluan and asked, Brother Mingluan, how are you going to report this to the immortal emperor? Actually, I've already investigated Yu Qianzhou. I'm very sure that he has no relationship with the myriad swords demon monarch. But he just happens to cultivate a Guiyuan sword technique that can control the myriad swords demon monarch. Actually, this sword technique doesn't have any power at all. It's just for show. It can't compare to the myriad swords demon monarch's invincible sword technique. Take a look at this. De Mingluan took out the sword technique that Yu Qianzhou had given him. The jade archive that he crushed in front of Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng was actually fake. He had put in some effort to reconcile with his two brothers. In reality, how could he so easily destroy something that he wanted to bring to the immortal emperor as evidence? Chapter 894. Wu Xiong examined the contents of the jade archive. He couldn't make out anything in a short amount of time, but he believed that De Mingluan wouldn't dare to fool the immortal emperor with something fake. He threw the jade archive back to De Mingluan and said with an unfriendly expression, De Mingluan, what do you mean by telling me this? Are you trying to threaten me? What are you thinking? Do you think I'd threaten you? De Mingluan put the jade archive away and sighed. I just want you to be mentally prepared. You might as well postpone your wedding to avoid being implicated. If things go south, you still have to get rid of them when you return. It's just a woman and there are plenty of women in the world. With our status in the immortal realm, we can get any woman we want. Brother Wu, it's best if you kill her and show the immortal emperor your loyalty. After all, you've only known each other for a short while. This will clear your name. As he spoke, he made a throat-slitting gesture. Wu Xiong's face immediately darkened. He stared at De Mingluan and said in a low voice, Are you saying that I should kill my own woman? Brother Wu, you're being too serious. If she really was your woman, how could I say such a thing? De Mingluan waved his hand and revealed an expression of a man who was decisive. She hasn't married you yet, right? She's still some distance away from becoming your woman. Wu Xiong clenched his fists in his sleeves and narrowed his eyes at De Mingluan. Then why aren't you afraid of being implicated? Why are you willing to take the risk to ask the immortal emperor to rid Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng of suspicion? That's a completely different matter. Haven't you heard that brothers are like limbs and women are like clothes? De Mingluan glanced at the sleeves that covered Wu Xiong's fists and said calmly, Women can be changed but not limbs. Women can be changed but not limbs. You're indeed a rare man. No wonder the immortal emperor gave you control of such a large merchant alliance. Wu Xiong scoffed. Then how are you going to protect them before the immortal emperor? Demingluan said with a serious expression, I will do my best until my last breath. I will use my life as a guarantee to immortal emperor that Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu did not know that Yu Qianqiu could control 10,000 swords beforehand. Wu Xiong nodded his head. With his hands behind his back he slowly circled around the great bright wheel twice. After pondering for a while he stood face to face with the great bright wheel. He squinted his eyes and said word by word, Brother Mingluan's words about women being like clothes, forgive me for being unable to agree. Demingluan was wide-eyed and tongue-tied. Then he swiftly looked around and waved his hands repeatedly saying, Brother Wu is talking nonsense, talking nonsense. If someone else were to hear this, then it would be very troublesome. I dare to say such words because I am not afraid of trouble. My woman can be bullied, humiliated and not abandoned, but that is only limited to myself, it is not up to others. If I cannot even protect my own woman, then no matter how high my position is, I will only be a coward who will never be able to rise again. How would I have the face to live in this world? Wu Xiong pointed at Demingluan and spoke resolutely. Then he slowly put his head in front of Demingluan and said, neither too fast nor too slow. Brother of Minglun values brotherhood so much. Wu Xiong's heart is comforted. I did not make the wrong friend. You and I have been friends for many years, but why do I feel that in your heart I am not as good as Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng? Could it be that you do not see me as a brother? Demingluan was surprised. Why does Brother Wu say this? If we are not brothers, then why would we say such words here? Then why are you willing to risk your life to save Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng when they are in trouble, but you want me to abandon my woman when I am in trouble? Is this something brothers should do? Wu Xiong gritted his teeth and said, comparing the two, since we are both brothers, why do we need to distinguish which is more important? Demingluan's brows immediately furrowed and he said in a deep voice, I can risk my life to protect the two of them, and I can also protect your woman and help you solve your problem. But the key is that it is not right for me to protect your woman in front of the immortal emperor. If I really did that, the immortal emperor would suspect you even more. Wouldn't that be harming you? Since you have this intention, why do you need to go so far and give up what is close at hand? Wu Xiong looked around and a smile appeared on his face as he transmitted his voice. Didn't you say that you have already interrogated Yu Qianqiu and confirmed that he is not related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords? Moreover, you have Yu Qianqiu's cultivation technique as proof. What do you mean? Demingluan asked suspiciously. Wu Xiong transmitted his voice back. You and I both know the immortal emperor's character. If you want to successfully protect Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng, I'm afraid it will be very difficult and even your own life will be in danger. I have a slightly better idea. Why don't you try it first? Maybe it can save us from this crisis. Demingluan's eyes lit up and he also transmitted his voice back. Since you have a good idea, why don't you say it quickly? Wu Xiong transmitted his voice back with a smile. You first do official business. Don't mention the matter of protecting Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. Just mention the matter of Yu Qianqiu controlling the demon lord of 10,000 swords. Then say that after your detailed investigation, you have already confirmed that Yu Qianqiu is not related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords. And because I came into contact with that Yu Qianqiu when the Divine Ruin Realm opened, I will use this as a reason to interrupt and put in a good word or two for Yu Qianqiu. The immortal emperor is not a fool. If we say this, he will naturally understand our selfishness. As long as we don't make things clear, it will not damage his impartial style of doing things, and it will not affect his decisiveness in killing in the future. Plus, we have been loyal to him for so many years, maybe this matter will be left unsettled. In fact, this was exactly what Demingluan wanted to do. Because he was afraid that one person's weight was not enough, he beat around the bush and pulled Wu Xiong in. Based on his understanding of Wu Xiong's character, he had indeed fallen into his trap. Demingluan was secretly happy, but his face still showed some worry as he said, will this work? Why don't we just make things clear? I will protect Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. You protect your woman. Maybe he will let us go on account of our many years of service. He talked back and forth, but he did not mention protecting Yu Qianqiu. In fact, his purpose in coming here was to protect Yu Qianqiu. There was no other way. Since Wei Chuanqiu had already said that Yu Qianqiu was very important to him, he could only do his best. In fact, Demingluan was indeed a person who valued relationships and righteousness, but he also knew that in order to survive in the immortal world, it was unavoidable to use the necessary methods. Although some methods were not suitable for his brothers and friends, it was most important to do his best to protect everyone. He was the type of person who had the ability, methods, schemes, and even ruthlessness. It was because of this ability that Jintai picked him to lead the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. However, he was also the type of person who put in the effort for his brothers and friends without asking for anything in return. Because of this, he felt that the long path of cultivation would not be lonely, and he would not let the merciless years gradually make him cold. This was because he knew better than others that the path of immortality was long. No matter how far one walked, no matter how high one's cultivation was, one would still be lonely. And friends like Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Ping, who could risk their lives for him at any time, were indispensable. It was really good to have their company along the way. Although they were beasts and he was human, sometimes beasts valued relationships more than humans. If he lost a friend like this, he would not be able to make up for it even if he wanted to, so De Mingluan wanted to do his best to protect them. Because such friends had come all the way, they had gone through all kinds of trials and tribulations. Everyone knew each other very well. It was almost impossible to find such a reassuring friend in the immortal world. There were many people with low cultivations who were willing to make friends with you, maybe because they wanted a backer. Those with equal cultivations were all scheming and deceiving each other. Those with higher cultivations were mostly disdainful of making friends with you. At least there was one thing that De Mingluan believed: if he encountered any trouble, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Ping would risk their lives to protect him. They would fight with him while bathing in blood and killing enemies together. They would definitely not leave him until death. Wu Xiong frowned and said, "When have you ever seen him show mercy? He has ruled the immortal world for so many years and has always been ruthless. If he shows mercy to us today, there will be others who will beg him to show mercy in the future. At that time, if he doesn't show mercy, the hearts of the people will be in chaos. How will he rule then? Do we really want him to kill everyone in the immortal world? So we have to give him a reason to show mercy. We can't make it clear. Only then will we have a chance. Taking a step back, he might implicate Yu Qianqiu and the others and let us go. If he still doesn't let us go and wants to kill to the end, then there's no other way. We can only beg him to show mercy. Success or failure, this is the last resort." To be able to reach their status in the immortal world, none of them were simple characters. Their words and actions were all far-sighted. De Mingluan sighed in his heart. Originally, he only wanted to bring Wu Xiong along to beg the immortal emperor because the two of them would have a higher chance of success. In the end, they were both capable subordinates of the immortal emperor, who knew that Wu Xiong would think further and more meticulously. His method was also more comprehensive. This time he really let Wu Xiong down. De Mingluan nodded solemnly and said, "All right, we'll do as you say." Wu Xiong slowly let out a sigh of relief. The two of them then strode out of the righteous heavenly gate, and turned into flowing lights as they flew downwards. At this time, Yu Qianqiu was probably still thinking about how to develop and strengthen his forces at the World Commerce Association, leisurely dreaming his sweet dreams. Little did he know that by casually showing off his skills and causing a ruckus, he had pulled a hair and affected the whole body. He didn't know how many people had been implicated, and all of them were unable to eat or sleep in peace. Some were anxious, some were terrified, and some were trying their best to help him solve the problem. Using the conclusion of Wu Sihai from the Four Great Families, this guy was a jinx. Wherever he went, he would be uneasy. However, what Wu Sihai didn't expect was that Yu Qianqiu had already brought disaster to the immortal world. A large group of people were terrified by his unintentional actions. Chapter 895. On the secondary peak next to the main peak of the Paradise of Bliss, there was a high wall made of green and pleasant jade. The wall was covered with all kinds of flower and bird patterns, and the layers of wavy walls were made of extremely rare pink jade. The pavilions, terraces, and buildings within the high walls were all constructed with various colored jades and jadeites. It was like a colorful crystal palace, exquisite, grand, and extremely gorgeous. A man in a golden robe slowly walked out of the crystal palace and into the four-cornered jade pavilion in the courtyard. He stood there steadily with his hands behind his back. This dignified man with a square face had a complicated hollowed-out golden crown on his head. Two sword-like eyebrows slanted into the left and right corners of his forehead, and the slender eyes under the sword-like eyebrows bloomed with a breathtaking cold light. Under the strong bridge of his nose, The tip of his nose was slightly hooked. His thin lips were tightly closed like two blades, and 3 strands of beard hung on his upper chest. His chiseled face was like 10,000 years of ice. There was not the slightest expression on his face. A superior aura arose spontaneously, making people fearful and not daring to peek at his true face. The golden robe worn by the tall and straight figure was different from the ones worn by ordinary people of the immortal palace. The golden robe that wrapped around his body was bound by a golden belt, and it was covered with a gorgeous and extraordinary wide golden robe. The robe was embroidered with golden threads that were full of coiling dragons and clouds. It was unknown how heavy this robe was. He was also wearing a pair of thick-soled golden boots. He stood there with the aura of a king. The strangest thing was that his body was faintly shrouded in a layer of faint golden glow. The glow was thin and curled up like a morning mist, faintly wandering around his body. Although this person's aura was extraordinary, it made people feel dreamy and illusory at first glance, giving people a feeling of unreality. If one looked at him in reality, it would be frightening, as if his whole person was always in the dreamy light. Following him was the devastatingly beautiful immortal Lord Ji Woo, and the silver-haired Yi Xuejun, who was dressed in a silver robe, stood outside the pavilion with her head slightly bowed. However, he stood there with an expressionless face. In the immortal world, there was someone who could make these two submit to him, so the identity of this golden-robed man was obvious. Not bad. This person was the monarch of the immortal world, the ruler of all living beings in the immortal world. The immortal emperor Jin Tai. Jin Tai, who had been silent ever since he entered the jadeite courtyard, silently walked around every corner of the building. Ji Woo and Heir Xuejun followed behind him, not daring to breathe loudly. They just quietly accompanied him. Although they did not know why he suddenly came, they did not dare to ask. Because this person was temperamental and took the lives of others to be worthless like ants. He could kill with a single thought, and no one in the entire immortal dimension dared to go against him. Ji Woo, are you satisfied with this place? A loud yet oppressive voice finally came from the person inside the pavilion. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who was standing with his hands behind his back, finally spoke. Ji Woo quickly bowed respectfully and said, "Thank you, Immortal Emperor, for your kindness." Ji Woo is very satisfied. However, Ji Woo didn't know how she was able to live under the foot of the Celestial Emperor's palace. She reflected on it day and night, feeling a little fearful. She didn't dare to stay here for long. After repeated consideration, Ji Woo decided to bid farewell to the Immortal Emperor and find another place to stay. Jin Tai slowly turned around, his half-closed eyes flashing with a bright light. He stared at Ji Woo for a while and said, "Since you're very satisfied, why look for another place to stay? This place was built for you. Just stay here." Ji Woo wanted to continue to decline, but Jin Tai's eyes flashed coldly. He stared at the thatched cottage on the side and asked, "Heir Xuejun, did you build this thatched cottage?" As soon as this was said, Ji Woo could not say the words that were on the tip of her tongue. She was a little nervous, afraid that Jin Tai would attack Heir Xuejun again. Heir Xuejun cupped his fists expressionlessly and said, "Yes." His tone was stiff, without the slightest respect. Jin Tai stared at him coldly. There was no abnormality, but there was a terrifying invisible pressure that forced Heir Xuejun to take a few steps back on the spot. In the blink of an eye, blood seeped out of the corner of Yi Xuejun's mouth, but he still spoke in a stiff tone. "Immortal Emperor, what did I do wrong to provoke Immortal Emperor's anger?" His white teeth were dyed red with blood and his body began to shake. Ji Woo was shocked. She stood between the two of them under the invisible pressure. She bowed to Jin Tai and said, "Immortal Emperor, please calm down." Ji Woo asked Brother Yi to build this hut. It really has nothing to do with him. If Immortal Emperor wants to blame someone, please blame Ji Woo. The invisible terrifying pressure disappeared silently in an instant. Heir Xuejun stabilized his body and bit his bloody lips without saying a word. Jin Tai's gaze fell on Ji Woo. "Since you pleaded for him, I will spare him once more. But Ji Woo, although I don't want to force you, my patience is limited. Think about it carefully. Within a month, I hope you can take the initiative to come to the Immortal Palace to find me. Don't let me come again." Ji Woo's face instantly turned pale. Jin Tai's so-called, "that matter," was for her to agree to become his celestial empress. The time limit he gave this time was undoubtedly a final warning. At this moment, two people suddenly shouted outside the green wall. Wu Xiong and Deming Luan are seeking an audience with Immortal Emperor. Jin Tai's eyes were slightly cold as he said, "Come in." Wu Xiong and Deming Luan's figures immediately appeared outside the door. They quickly walked to the pavilion and saluted together. "Greetings, Immortal Emperor." "What is it?" Jin Tai stared at the two and asked. The two looked at each other and knew that Jin Tai did not like to be long-winded. Wu Xiong stepped forward and took the lead to report. "I will be getting married soon. I especially came to ask for leave from Immortal Emperor. I hope Immortal Emperor will grant me this." "Granted," Jin Tai said expressionlessly. "Commander Wu has worked hard and contributed greatly. On the day of your wedding, I will reward you handsomely." "Thank you, Immortal Emperor." Wu Xiong retreated. Deming Luan stepped forward at the right time and saluted. He told them about the fight between Yu Qianqiu and the others and how he controlled 10,000 swords. When they heard this, Snow Lord and Ji Wu's eyes could not help but move, but they did not dare to change too much. They did not expect Yu Qianqiu to kill two late exalted immortal cultivators as a soul formation cultivator. However, what shocked the two of them the most was that Yu Qianqiu was actually able to control 10,000 swords. The two of them naturally knew what this meant. It should be known that the two of them had personally fought against the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch back then. Jin Tai's fear of the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords was not something that could be explained in a few words. Both of them knew that Yu Qianqiu was in big trouble this time. They could not help but quietly observe the changes in Jin Tai's expression. After this incident, I immediately suspected that Yu Qianqiu was related to the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords, so I immediately found Yu Qianqiu to investigate in detail. In the end, I found that he had nothing to do with the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords. It was only because he cultivated a sword technique that only looked impressive. Although he could control 10,000 swords, its power was ordinary. Deming Luan said as he presented a jade archive with both hands. "This is the sword technique of Gui Yuan that Yu Qianqiu cultivated. I have also brought it with me. Please have a look, Immortal Emperor." When Jin Tai heard the name, Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords, his eyes immediately lit up as if they were about to shoot out. He muttered, "Sword technique of Gui Yuan?" He opened his palm and the jade archive immediately appeared in his hand. His eyes opened and closed and the light in his eyes flickered. It was obvious that he was examining the contents inside. The people outside the pavilion held their breaths and waited quietly. After waiting for a long time, Jin Tai still did not make a move. They were shocked. This was the first time they had seen Jin Tai pay so much attention to an item. It was obvious that he was very wary of the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords, who had died many years ago. After a long time, Jin Tai snorted coldly. "It looks like it, but it's not. It's just something that looks impressive. However, the person who wrote this sword technique is not simple. The art of soul splitting and manipulation is extraordinary. The person who wrote this seems to be deliberately hiding something. Now, I really suspect that this sword technique has something to do with the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords." When he said this, the four people below turned pale with fright. They thought, could it be that Yu Qianqiu was really related to the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords? This was a little too inconceivable. The countermeasure that Wu Xiong and Great Brightwheel had previously discussed could not be said. Jin Tai swept a glance at the four people, thinking that they had been frightened by the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords. He snorted coldly and said, "Don't be afraid. I personally killed the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords. I saw his body and spirit destroyed with my own eyes. What's there to be afraid of about someone who can't be more dead?" His gaze turned to the dazed Great Brightwheel and he asked in a deep voice, "Since you suspect that he is related to the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords, why didn't you deal with it earlier? Do you really need me to teach you about this?" Great Brightwheel didn't get the chance to explain. Wu Xiong took another step forward and answered first, reporting to the Immortal Emperor. "This matter is all my fault. I was the one who asked Great Brightwheel to delay his actions." "This matter has something to do with you?" Jin Tai's eyes flashed with a cold light. Great Brightwheel was anxious. He lowered his head and didn't say a word. He didn't know how Wu Xiong would deal with this. Wu Xiong hurriedly explained, "Because I accidentally came into contact with Yu Qianqiu during the meeting in the Divine Ruins realm. At that time I learned from him that he had picked up a jade archive in the Divine Ruins realm, which recorded this Gui Yuan sword technique. At that time he wanted to flatter me and wanted to give this jade archive to me. At that time I thought that it was something left behind by the disciples of the various sects in the Divine Ruins realm. I thought that the disciples sent out by the various sects were only at the demigod stage. What good things could they have left behind? I didn't take a fancy to it at that time, so I didn't take it from him. Instead I accepted an immortal herb worth 60 billion divine grade spirit stones. I am guilty and I am willing to accept the immortal emperor's punishment. Great Bright Will sighed slightly in his heart when he heard this. In order to protect his woman, this Wu Xiong actually didn't hesitate to make up lies and dirty lies. Oh, I didn't think that the external affairs great commander of my immortal palace would also learn to accept bribes. Jean Tai said indifferently, then raised the jade archive in his hand. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he said, "In that case this jade archive actually came from the Divine Ruins realm. Wu Xiong, are you sure you didn't make a mistake?" Chapter 896. This official can confirm that this Guiyuan sword art was picked up by Yu Qianqiu from the Divine Ruin realm. Wu Xiong replied respectfully. He was worried that there was something wrong with the jade archive in Jean Tai's hand, hence he confirmed that the sword art came from the Divine Ruin realm, but did not mention that the jade archive came from the Divine Ruin realm. From the Divine Ruin realm? Jean Tai muttered under his breath as he looked at the jade archive in his hand. No one knew what he was thinking about, but he seemed to be confused. Everyone held their breath as they waited for a while. When Jean Tai regained his senses, he glared coldly at Wu Xiong. A mere 60 billion divine-grade spirit stones worth of immortal herbs can bribe the two of you to plead for mercy? It seems like even if this Yu Qianqiu has no connection with the 10,000 Swords sect, his ability is not small. Although his tone was neither too fast nor too slow, the complexions of the Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong changed. They knew that Jean Tai was already very unhappy about this matter. They were afraid that no one would be able to persuade him. Yu Qianqiu's little life was certainly going to be lost. Now they would have to see if Jean Tai wanted to escalate this matter. Both of them had already prepared themselves to take a step back. It was no longer important whether they could protect Yu Qianqiu at this critical moment. After all, Yu Qianqiu had nothing to do with them. The most important thing was to protect their own people. Ji Wu pursed her lips, hesitating for a moment before asking, "Yu Qianqiu? The one who left those words on the waterfall, Yu Qianqiu?" Everyone turned to look at Jean Tai at the same time. A trace of surprise flashed across Jean Tai's eyes as he asked, "Could it be that immortal monarch Ji Wu knows Yu Qianqiu?" Immortal crocodile monarch looked at Ji Wu nervously, but Ji Wu took a step forward, replying respectfully, "Ji Wu does not know this Yu Qianqiu. I only heard that this person left some words on the waterfall, and created some very beautiful things that attracted people from the immortal world." She turned to look at the Great Bright Wheel. Great Bright Wheel is in charge of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, and has lived in the hallucinatory immortal city for a long time. I wonder if she's really as beautiful as the rumors say? De Minglun was slightly startled, then he cupped his fists and said, replying, "Immortal monarch, it is true. This should be his way of doing business and attracting people. For this he even specially built the tallest building in the celestial world, which is 23 stories high. It is indeed quite unique." Ji Wu faintly smiled and said, "This Yu Qianqiu is also a wonderful person. He actually thought of such a method to attract people. If there's a chance, I'll have to pay a visit to his World Chamber of Commerce. If that World Chamber of Commerce is really as beautiful as the rumors say, I would like to invite them to help me design and build a beautiful residence in the future." De Minglun and Wu Xiong looked at each other speechlessly. Then they quietly looked at Jean Tai. Jean Tai glanced coldly at the Crystal Palace, then looked at Ji Wu and asked, "Immortal Lord Ji Wu, are you not satisfied with this residence?" "I wouldn't dare." Ji Wu bowed and said, "The Celestial Emperor personally gave me a place to stay. Ji Wu is only grateful and doesn't dare to be dissatisfied." Although she spoke respectfully, everyone could hear that Ji Wu was clearly dissatisfied with this residence but didn't dare to say it out of consideration for the Celestial Emperor's face. Jean Tai frowned and said, "If you don't like it, then build one that you like." He then tilted his head and said, "Wu Xiong, summon that Yu Qianqiu and tell him to build a satisfactory residence for Immortal Lord Ji Wu. Tell him that if he does well I will reward him." Wu Xiong was overjoyed. Since Jean Tai said this, it meant that he wouldn't pursue the matter of Yu Qianqiu anymore. Then all the danger was resolved. Wu Xiong was about to accept the order when Ji Wu shouted, "Wait." They looked over and saw Ji Wu bow and say, "Ji Wu appreciates the Celestial Emperor's kindness. However, this Yu Qianqiu might be related to the demon monarch of myriad swords. How can Ji Wu do something that will make the Celestial Emperor unhappy just because of my own small preferences?" Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong were secretly overjoyed, but when they heard this, their hearts dropped again. Jean Tai paused and stared at Wu Xiong and Great Bright Wheel and said, "You two have really investigated whether this Yu Qianqiu is related to myriad swords?" "Yes, we don't dare to lie." Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong replied in unison. The two of them had thrown caution to the wind this time. Although they said they didn't dare, in reality they were lying. Jean Tai nodded slightly and said, "Ji Wu, since they have already investigated, it means that Yu Qianqiu indeed has nothing to do with Wan Jian. Recruiting him to build you a residence that you like can't be considered as abandoning the public for personal reasons. Moreover, a person who has been dead for a long time is not enough for us to go to war." These words were equivalent to confirming the matter. Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong immediately sighed in relief, knowing that the danger had passed. "This." Ji Wu pondered for a moment and said, "Let's wait until I have the chance to go to the World Commerce Association to take a look. If it really is to my liking, it won't be too late to summon him. If it is not to my liking, why would I ask him to come?" Jean Tai did not speak when he heard this. The reason why he put Ji Wu under house arrest here was to make Ji Wu agree to be his immortal empress without being forced. After all, no one wanted their wife to be forced, let alone the dignified immortal empress from the immortal world. He had just set a deadline of 1 month. After a month, if Ji Wu still did not agree, then he would use force. Therefore, he would not let Ji Wu go for at least this month unless Ji Wu agreed in advance. "Since you have made up your mind, then I won't force you. Let's wait until you see it in the future." Jean Tai pushed the boat with the current and said to Wu Xiong and Great Bright Wheel, "If there is nothing else, go do your own things." After that, the golden glow flashed in the jadeite pavilion and disappeared. As soon as Jean Tai left, the invisible pressure that enveloped the entire courtyard disappeared. But at this moment, Yu Shuaijun suddenly staggered and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Fresh blood sprayed onto the pillars of the jadeite pavilion and slid down bit by bit. It was a ghastly sight. "Brother Yu, what happened to you?" Ji Wu exclaimed and quickly supported him. "Of course, it is Jean Tai's doing." Yu Shuaijun gritted his teeth and waved his hand. "It's nothing. I have been holding it in. I feel better after spitting it out." He took out an immortal pill and swallowed it. Ji Wu looked at Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong awkwardly. She did not know if they would report Yu Shuaijun scolding Jean Tai in front of them. Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong looked at each other, feeling a little emotional. Back then, one of the 12 great immortal monarchs was one of the top figures in the immortal world. Both of them had to be respectful when they saw him. Now he had fallen into such a situation. The world was fickle and fate was unpredictable. In fact, Ji Wu was thinking too much. The two were not fools. They both knew that Ji Wu and Yu Shuaijun had a close relationship. If they reported Yu Shuaijun to the immortal emperor, wouldn't they be looking for trouble in the future? Everyone knew that the weak could not win against the strong. Sooner or later, Ji Wu would become the immortal empress. If they offended the immortal empress, they would not want to live in the future. To put it bluntly, even if Ji Wu killed the two of them now, their deaths would be in vain. The immortal emperor would not do anything to Ji Wu. The two naturally pretended not to see or hear anything. They cupped their hands at Ji Wu and said, "Farewell, immortal monarch." Ji Wu held Yu Shuaijun's arm with one hand and raised the other slightly, saying, "Goodbye." Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong cupped their hands at Yu Shuaijun again, then quickly turned and walked out, turning into 2 streams of light outside the courtyard. "Brother Yu, why do you have to do this?" Ji Wu held Yu Shuaijun's arm and helped him into the pavilion. She set up a soundproof enchantment, shook her head and sighed, "You know it's not good to go against him. Why do you want to suffer? It's not that I want to criticize you, but you are too unwise." Yu Shuaijun pushed her arm away, lifted his legs on the table in the pavilion, sat cross-legged and said, "I want to bear with it, but when I see him I can't take it." He waved his hand and said, "Forget it, let's not talk about me. He just gave you a month's time limit. It seems that he has lost his patience. What are you going to do after a month? Jiwoo shook her head and smiled bitterly. What to do? What can I do? Who in the immortal realm disobeys his will? I'll take it one step at a time. Yu Shuejun raised his hand and wiped the blood on his mouth. He looked at the bright red in his palm and frowned. Actually, I have 2 immature ideas, but the 2 of us are trapped here. It's very difficult to implement them. Jiwoo's eyes lit up and said, Brother Yu, why don't you tell me? Yu Shuejun thought for a while and shook his head slowly. It's just a flash of inspiration. It's almost impossible to implement. Say it. Jiwoo said with a pleading tone. Tell me, let me hear it. Yu Shuejun put his hands on his knees, paused, and said, Last time when Silver Armor 1000 Soldiers sent us back to the immortal realm in the underworld, he said that if you need any help you can look for him. He will do his best. 1000 Soldiers is the Emperor of the Underworld's most trusted person. If you can send someone to contact 1000 Soldiers and ask the Emperor of the Underworld to look for the Immortal Emperor, you may have a chance because of the Emperor of the Underworld. The Emperor of the Underworld will look for the Immortal Emperor for me? Jiwoo was stunned for a while and then smiled bitterly. This is impossible. Even if 1000 Soldiers can really ask the Emperor of the Underworld for help, the Immortal Emperor and the Emperor of the Underworld have never been on good terms. Not to mention this kind of thing, the Emperor of the Underworld will not give in. Moreover, who can contact 1000 Soldiers? 1000 Soldiers lives high in the Emperor of the Underworld. Even if an ordinary person goes to the Underworld, I'm afraid it will be difficult to see him. Moreover, we are under house arrest here and there is no way to contact suitable and reliable people to go to the Underworld. If this method doesn't work, what's the other way? I said I just thought of it by chance. It's not feasible. As for the second method, it's even more impossible. Yu Shuejun smiled. At this time there was no psychological burden. He said casually, At present, apart from the Emperor of the Underworld, there is another person who may help you. That person is Yu Qiancho's master, Bai Changchun. Although Bai Changchun was defeated by the Emperor of the Underworld, with his ability to fight against 4 underworld generals alone, I dare say that in the immortal realm and the Emperor of the Underworld, no one is his match. The most terrifying thing about this person is that no matter what kind of expert he meets, he gets stronger the more he fights. I have seen this person's ability. I am afraid he will not die so easily. Maybe his cultivation is even stronger now. Chapter 897. Jiwoo's expression froze. She had fought with Bai Changchun twice. When it came to Bai Changchun's ability, she knew it better than Yi Shuejuan. He was an extraordinary existence, and the more he fought, the stronger he became. She clearly remembered that when they first fought, Bai Changchun was still no match for her and Yi Shao. But when he appeared again not long after, that terrifying scene was still fresh in her memory. Yi Shuejuan saw that she was silent and lowered his voice. If Bai Changchun is not dead, I believe that he is the one who is qualified to fight against Kintaichi. Because I don't think Jin Tai is necessarily the opponent of Emperor of the Underworld. Since Bai Changchun can fight with Emperor of the Underworld, he can naturally fight with Jin Tai. If Yu Qiancho can contact him and ask him to deal with Jin Tai, even if he is not Jin Tai's opponent, at least he can make Jin Tai forget about you for a short time. If he can kill Jin Tai, it will be better. But he was seriously injured by Emperor of the Underworld and fled into the boundless dark land. Now I don't know if he is dead or alive. Even if he is still alive, can Yu Qiancho find him? Even if he can find him, why would Yu Qiancho let his master take such a big risk? Brother Yi, think about it. If Bai Changchun comes here to challenge Jin Tai, Emperor of the Underworld will come to take revenge. At that time, Bai Changchun will not only face Jin Tai. Jiwoo bitterly smiled and said, Besides, it's not good to tell him this through someone else. We're under house arrest here, so there's no way for us to meet him. If someone else told him this, do you think he would believe it? Most importantly, he doesn't need to help me like this. I said it is an immature method. If you say that he doesn't need to help, then you are overthinking. You have saved his life just now. Shouldn't he be grateful? Jiwoo shook her head and said, But he saved me before. If he didn't save me before, I don't need to save him this time. An eye for an eye, no one owes anyone anything, so we cancel each other out. It's a pity that you and I don't have a chance to go to the illusory immortal city. Otherwise, I would have to ask him to contact his master, Snow Lord replied casually. But in his heart he was thinking that if he could really meet Yu Qianqiu, he could ask Yu Qianqiu for help. If Yu Qianqiu dared to refuse, he could threaten him with the fact that he touched Ji Wu's butt. Yu Qianqiu had to consider whether Jin Tai would skin him alive if he touched Jin Tai's wife's butt. As soon as the two streaks of light flew out of the Paradise Immortal Realms mountain range, they immediately slowed down. Wu Xiong and Deming Luan looked at each other with lingering fear in their hearts. Even now they still didn't dare to believe that they had passed the test just like that. Our luck is good. I didn't expect Dancing Ji Immortal Monarch to stand up for me at such a critical moment. Wu Xiong shook his head in disbelief. Luck, I'm so lucky. If it wasn't for Immortal Lord Wu Ji, I really can't think of anyone else in the immortal world who could change the Immortal Emperor's attitude. It's not just our luck, it's also Yu Qianqiu's luck. I didn't expect those strange things he came up with to save his life at such a critical moment. It's not just good luck, it's simply good fate. Deming Luan recalled the incident and could not help but sigh. It's good that the crisis is over. Wu Xiong cupped his hands as he flew and said, Brother Mingluan, I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. Deming Luan also cupped his hands in farewell, and the two immediately sped up in two different directions. The two of them sighed, but they didn't know that Ji Wu's words were not because of their or Yu Qianqiu's good luck. Other than Heir Shuijun, no one knew that Yu Qianqiu and Ji Wu had known each other for a long time. Because of this relationship, it was the key to surviving this crisis. But then again, if Bai Chongqun hadn't shown mercy to Ji Wu in the Holy Eastland, then Ji Wu wouldn't have helped him today. But if Ji Wu had been killed by Bai Chongqun, Heir Shuijun would not have been able to return to the Celestial Realm with Ji Wu. If Heir Shuijun did not return to the Celestial Realm with the small silver ball that Yu Qianqiu gave him, then Yu Qianqiu would still be in the human world as Duguqiubai, and would not come to the Celestial Realm. Therefore, some things were predestined and they could only develop step by step. The World Chamber of Commerce's business had begun to get on the right track, and hundreds of feudal lords were gradually getting into the swing of things. After careful consideration, Yu Qianqiu understood that his first plan in the Celestial Realm had succeeded. With the World Chamber of Commerce as a pretense for doing business, the next step could be justifiably to cooperate with Skyward Palace. As long as he obtained the various immortal pills he needed, it would not take long for a large number of Immortal Realm experts to appear in his hands. Just think about it. If the feudal lords, the army of Utopia, and the hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the human world all reached the Immortal Realm, it would be a terrifying thing. The more experts there were, the stronger he would be, and many things would be easier to do. As long as the overall strength of the World Chamber of Commerce increased, his next step would be to find a way to enter the Netherworld. He could not let Bai Chongqun's life and death be unknown. Until now he still tried to contact Bai Chongqun every day, but there was no news. This made him very anxious, but he understood that some things were useless to be anxious. He could only take it step by step. However, if he wanted to walk in the Netherworld, he would not be able to do so without enough manpower and strength. Now that he knew a lot, the Netherworld was too vast, many times larger than the Celestial Realm. There was also the endless land of darkness which few people set foot in. For this reason Yu Qianqiu had already thought about it. As long as he could find out whether Bai Chongqun was dead or alive, he would not hesitate to throw hundreds of thousands of Immortal Realm cultivators into the Netherworld. I don't care how vast the Netherworld is. As long as there are ghosts, there will be my people. I don't believe that I can't find any clues. This was what Yu Qianqiu thought. For this day to come, Yu Qianqiu could be said to have put in a lot of effort. However, things were somewhat unpredictable. He had arranged for Shui Mingqing to contact Skyward Palace about purchasing immortal pills, but who knew that there would be no news at all. For this reason, Yu Qianqiu even personally went to Skyward Palace's branch. In the end, the disciples of Skyward Palace's branch told him that the elders in charge had left to attend to something. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that it was strange. Shui Mingqing was too heartless. He did not even think of a way to send a message before leaving. So he tried to find Du Feng, Hui Yunlong and the others. In the end, the answers he got were similar. This made him suspect that these people were deliberately hiding from him. It was not until he met Wan Ling, who took the initiative to visit him and build a good relationship with him, that his guess was confirmed from her mouth. This group of people was indeed deliberately hiding from him. After asking for the reason, Yu Qianqiu was suddenly speechless. It turned out that these people were also frightened by the scene of him controlling the 10,000 swords. They all suspected that he was related to the 10,000 swords Demon King. They were afraid that when the Immortal Palace took action, they would implicate him, so they deliberately distanced themselves from him. In fact, Yu Qianqiu himself did not pay much attention to this matter in the beginning. After all, he had already passed this hurdle in front of the Great Bright Wheel. But now that this group of people had messed with him, he also became nervous. Thinking about it, it made sense. The Great Bright Wheel was the Great Bright Wheel. It definitely did not represent the attitude of immortal Emperor Jin Tai. The latter was the master who held the power of life and death. On the rooftop of the World Commerce Association, there was a long rattan chair that could seat 3 people. However, there was only a man and a woman sitting side by side in the sun, looking a bit like a couple. Yu Qianqiu was worried, but on the surface he lazily said, "Thank you for telling me this, but they are all afraid of being implicated by me. Are you not afraid?" Wan Ling tilted her head to look at him and chuckled. "Others may not know your background, but do you think I don't know? Do you think I need to be afraid?" Yu Qianqiu was startled. Think about it, the other party thought of him as a trusted secret agent of the Immortal Emperor. Why would he be afraid? Speechless, he tilted his head to look at the smiling Wan Ling. She was quite pretty. No matter how he looked at her, she did not look like such a pervert. He couldn't help but ask, "Wan Ling, I heard that you like to steal other people's husbands. Is that true?" Wan Ling's smile abruptly stopped. Her expression slightly darkened. If someone else said this in front of her, she would have already exploded. However, the person in front of her was Yu Qianqiu. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the two of them. The newcomer was wearing a golden robe and was thin. Who else could it be but De Minglun? The two of them quickly stood up and bowed. De Minglun seemed to be a bit surprised that Wan Ling would be alone with Yu Qianqiu. He then directly asked Yu Qianqiu, "Where is Wu Xiong's wife?" "She left early in the morning." Yu Qianqiu was a bit apprehensive as he asked, "Why did executive come here?" De Minglun looked at Wan Ling and didn't say anything. It seemed that it was not very convenient with an outsider around. Yu Qianqiu understood and immediately smiled at Wan Ling. "I have some things to do here, so I won't keep you for long. Come and play often when you have time." Wan Ling nodded and bowed to De Minglun before flying away from the rooftop. Before she left, she couldn't help but look deeply at the two of them. From the way the two of them talked, she could tell that the relationship between the two of them was not ordinary. Especially when the two of them looked like they wanted to whisper something. Why was there a need for the dignified executive of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to be like this with a small World Commerce Chamber sect leader? From this, Wan Ling was even more certain that Yu Qianqiu was a secret agent of the Immortal Emperor. At the same time, she was even more certain that nothing would happen to Yu Qianqiu. De Minglun looked around the rooftop and asked, "Where is Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed, "AI. Don't mention Wei Chuanqiu anymore. I don't know what happened to him, but he seemed to have lost his soul these 2 days. He was crying and talking about his already dead daughter, Xiao Yue." De Minglun immediately knew what was going on. He had personally given that bat jade pendant to Wei Chuanqiu, so he had already expected it. He immediately frowned and said, "Where are they? Bring me to find them." "Please follow me." Yu Qianqiu led De Minglun down the rooftop. After entering the interior of the 22nd floor, De Minglun was also attracted by the clean, bright and simple style. He couldn't help but look around a few more times. The two of them came to a large door at the end of the corridor. Yu Qianqiu pushed open the door and pointed inside. Chapter 898. This was a large room. There were 2 rooms on the top floor. There were no furnishings inside, only a few rattan chairs. The room was very quiet. Yun Peng silently stood by the window and looked outside. Wei Chuanqiu had finally stopped crying. He was paralyzed on a rattan chair with a dazed expression. The door was pushed open, causing Yun Peng to turn his head. Wei Chuanqiu was still lying there, unmoved. Seeing the two walk in, Yun Peng stared at the Great Bright Wheel and said lightly, "You shouldn't have given him this jade pendant." The Great Bright Wheel looked at Wei Chuanqiu, who was holding the bat pendant in a daze, and said disapprovingly, "Let him be like this, It'll be fine once the sadness passes. How did it go? Yun Peng's gaze turned to Yu Qianqiu and said, what does immortal Emperor Jin Tai plan to do to him? Yu Qianqiu's heart clenched when he heard this. This was also the result he wanted to know. Perhaps she was stimulated by the words, immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Wei Chuanqiu, who was paralyzed on the rattan chair, made a goo-goo sound in her throat. Her pair of lifeless eyes that were immersed in the past gradually became lively. The three looked at him at the same time. Wei Chuanqiu looked at the great bright wheel, then stared at the bat pendant in his hand for a while, and then carefully put it away. You're back from the immortal palace? Wei Chuanqiu struggled to stand as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. The others saw that he was speaking normally again and didn't say anything. They didn't want to bring up his sad past again. The great bright wheel nodded slightly and said, this time it was a fluke. At least it passed unscathed. The immortal emperor has already made his stance clear. He won't pursue this matter anymore. Yu Qianqiu's tense nerves immediately relaxed. He smiled at the three people who were looking at him in a simple and honest manner. Wei Chuanqiu tilted his head to look at the great bright wheel and said, when did Jin Tai become so easy to talk to? You must have put in a lot of effort. Otherwise, with Jin Tai Ning's habit of not letting the wrong person go, this guy would probably be in trouble. I did put in some effort, but it was useless. De Mingluan stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, actually the one who played the decisive role was someone else. This brat's fortune was really good. At the crucial moment, immortal monarch Ji Wu suddenly spoke up for him. This was why the immortal emperor changed his mind. It was so close. Immortal monarch dancing Ji? The three of them exclaimed in unison. Wei Chuanqiu asked curiously, why would immortal monarch Wu Ji speak up for him? De Mingluan immediately explained what had happened. Only then did the few of them understand what had happened. Wei Chuanqiu immediately clicked his tongue and said, it seems that you are really lucky. The words on the waterfall and this tall building actually saved your life. It seems that the money spent on building this tall building is worth it. Luck. Yu Qianqiu laughed along. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. In fact, he knew better than anyone else. Immortal monarch Ji Wu definitely did not speak up for him because she wanted him to help build a residence. There could not be such a coincidence. The real reason was because they were acquaintances. This time, immortal monarch Ji Wu had returned the favor of saving his life. He could not tell that this woman was quite a loyal person. Well, this matter is over. It's time for me to return to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. De Mingluan glanced at them, turned into a stream of light, and directly flew out of the open window. Obviously, he came here to say hello and reassure everyone. He did not even give Yu Qianqiu a chance to say a few words of gratitude. Only the three of them were left in the room. A troublesome matter that worried all three of them had been resolved. The three of them immediately relaxed. Yun Peng looked up and down at Wei Chuanqiu. Then, without saying a word, he walked out in a snow-white robe with firm steps. Wei Chuanqiu and Yu Qianqiu looked at each other. They both knew that Yun Peng was not used to being confined in the room. He liked the high sky and wide clouds. They were afraid that he would have to go to the rooftop again. As for Yun Peng's habit, Yu Qianqiu raised both his hands in approval. This habit was too good. There was an early-stage immortal emperor expert guarding the rooftop of the World Chamber of Commerce every day. That was an invisible pressure that was enough to deter thieves. Ordinary people really did not dare to trespass the World Chamber of Commerce. Feeling relieved, Yu Qianqiu slowly walked to the window where Yun Peng was standing. He looked outside and pondered. Originally, he was worried that the people from Heaven Palace were avoiding him. Now there was no need for that. After a period of time, those people who were watching nervously would definitely take the initiative to pay a visit when they saw that the World Chamber of Commerce was safe and sound. Then he would wait for a while. If he appeared to be too anxious, he would be at a disadvantage in bargaining. He would take the opportunity to settle other matters. Bat King Wei, do you still remember what you promised me in your nest? Yu Qianqiu looked out the window and said, what? Wei Chuanqiu immediately became nervous. He had already faintly guessed what Yu Qianqiu was going to say. He patted his chest and coughed. I'm too sad. I'm not feeling well. Let's talk about it later. However, how could this kind of small trick fool an experienced hooligan like Yu Qianqiu? Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned around and stared at him. He said resolutely and decisively, the disciple that I introduced to you, she is already on her way. Wei Chuanqiu's expression twitched and froze on the spot. As expected, Yu Qianqiu had already informed him in advance. He did not want to say anything more. He strode out of the room, leaving Wei Chuanqiu alone in the room in a daze. The entire 22nd floor was under Yu Qianqiu's sole control. Of course, if Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Ping wanted a room on this floor, he would not say anything. Yu Qianqiu, who had returned to his room, was very conflicted. There was no other reason than that he had not visited Furong Wu Lixue and the others for a long time. He had wanted to take this opportunity to go and comfort them one by one. However, now that he had met them, it would be inexcusable if he did not accompany them. After meeting them, going to bed, chatting, and then immediately leaving? He really could not stand the grief in their eyes when they parted. However, world commerce had only been established not long ago. Trouble could come knocking at their door at any time. He could not abandon world commerce to accompany women all day. Hugging a beauty in one hand and wielding a sword to conquer the world with the other was a good idea. He had heard of such a cool thing, but who would dare to do such a thing? They would definitely die a quick death. Moreover, he was still carefully working hard. How could he have the qualifications to act cool? He could only make them wait. He would bring them back after he had established himself. Yu Qianqiu comforted himself and disappeared from his room. When he reappeared, he had already returned to Bai Suzhen's room in Ethereal Palace in Utopia. However, he realized that Bai Suzhen was not in the room. He closed his eyes and used his divine sense to search the entire Utopia. At that moment, Bai Suzhen was in the Immortal Herb Plantation. As Yu Qianqiu had instructed her and Chu Ping'er to keep an eye on the Immortal Herb Plantation, she had spent most of her time here recently. Bai Suzhen, who was walking in the Immortal Herb Garden to check on the growth of the immortal herbs, suddenly stopped. Yu Qianqiu's voice rang in her ears, asking her to return to her room. A peaceful smile appeared on Bai Suzhen's face. In a flash, she flew towards Ethereal Palace. As Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was no longer what it used to be, the entire area of Utopia had become very wide. Mountains and rivers had appeared one after another. Because of this, the purple chaos was getting further and further away from Ethereal Palace. In order to make better use of the purple chaos to plant immortal herbs, the Immortal Herb Garden was set far away from Ethereal Palace. After half a day, Bai Suzhen returned to her room. As soon as she entered the room, she saw Yu Qianqiu lying on her couch and looking at her with a smile. A gentle smile appeared on Bai Suzhen's face. She walked to the couch and sat down. She looked at him and asked, "You've been waiting for a long time, right?" Actually, Yu Qianqiu didn't wait for long. Seeing that Bai Suzhen wouldn't be back for a while, he was afraid that something would happen during this half a day. Thus, he returned to the World Commerce Association to oversee things. He only silently watched Bai Suzhen fly back. When Bai Suzhen was about to arrive, he returned to her room. Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to her. He changed his position on the couch and rested his head on Bai Suzhen's thigh. Bai Suzhen also adjusted her position and tried to make him as comfortable as possible. She stroked his hair and asked, "Did you summon me back for something?" Smelling Bai Suzhen's body fragrance, Yu Qianqiu, who was calming and relaxing, couldn't help but smile wryly when he heard this. "When can I always lie down like this and not care about anything? Then I can have my clothes stretched out and food served, and there's even a beautiful woman to accompany me." As he spoke, he reached out and stroked Bai Suzhen's tranquil and smiling face. "I'm sorry. This time I might have to break your peaceful life." Bai Suzhen grabbed his hand that was stroking her face and looked down at Yu Qianqiu, who was lying on her lap. She smiled faintly and said, "As long as you are well, this is my peaceful life. Do you need me to do anything? I know you don't have any interest in cultivation anymore, but I found you a master without your consent. I hope you won't be angry." Yu Qianqiu looked into Bai Suzhen's eyes and said, "If you really don't want to, then forget it." He had already decided that if Bai Suzhen didn't want to, he definitely wouldn't force her. When the time comes, he would consider letting Lady Mu go. "You found me a master?" Bai Suzhen was startled. Yu Qianqiu immediately climbed up and explained excitedly, "I found him from the immortal realm. Your master is not ordinary." He explained how he met Wei Chuanqiu and emphasized the origin of the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra in Wei Chuanqiu's hands. He told her that he hoped she could cultivate the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra. Hearing this, Bai Suzhen was very surprised. She didn't expect there to be such a powerful person like the ancestor of 10,000 demons, Tai Shuzheng, in the demon race. Imagine how powerful the cultivation treasure left behind by a person who could be compared to the devil god would be. However, she was only surprised. Bai Suzhen didn't seem to have much interest in this. She frowned and thought for a while, then slowly nodded and said, "I'm willing. I hope I can help you after I've cultivated it." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.